Hello everyone, my name is Daria. Welcome back to my channel. I really thought that I'd be able to wear these fangs throughout the entirety of this video. Like every single time I sat down to film, I was like, oh, I'll just like pop on the fangs and it'll be super fun. No, absolutely not. I already have a bit of a lisp, so adding in these fangs, it's just a recipe for disaster. I'll try to keep them in for the remainder of this intro, but just know this is the first and last time they will be making an appearance. Now let's get down to business. Let's get down to the task that I'm going to be trying to accomplish in this video today, which is reading the entirety of the Vampire Academy series by Rochelle Mead. Now this book series was just one of many that was born out of the Twilight craze and pop culture's general obsession with paranormal romance, particularly vampires. And I would definitely say that it was one of the more popular series. I think anyone who sort of was reading YA during the mid to late 2000s had, if not read this series already, definitely heard of it. And it still is managing to capture people's attention because in a few weeks' time, days' time, I don't know when this video is going up, this book series is going to get a new streaming television adaptation. So given that this adaptation is on the horizon, and I, for one, am very excited to watch it, I thought that I would do what I do best and take a look at the source material and force myself to read an entire series of books that I'm not particularly interested in for you guys. My history with Vampire Academy is a tad bit sordid. There is some hurt there. There are some feelings of betrayal, on my end anyway. I read the first 4 books in the Vampire Academy series in quick succession a couple years ago, and then I reached the 4th book, and there were things that went down in that book that I simply could not reconcile with. I didn't like that book at all, and I decided to drop the series. And in all honesty, the only reason I picked up that series was so I could get to Bloodlines, which, if you don't know, is the spin-off series based on the wildly popular Vampire Academy character Adrian Ivashkov. But now I think it really is time for me to tackle this beast, for me to right my wrongs, to finish what I goddamn started. The Vampire Academy series follows a young woman named Rose, who is a half vampire, half human, and it is her job to guard and protect her royal best friend, Alyssa. We follow Rose as she goes through trainings and classes and tries to learn how to be the best guardian that she can be. All the while, the bad vampires, aka the Strigoi, are multiplying in numbers, and they are starting to pick off and kill all the good vampires. And while that threat is looming large, Rose and Lissa are also dealing with some interpersonal conflicts and things going on with them. Lissa has some unexplained abilities and powers, and Rose is trying to do her best to support her friend while also keeping those powers a secret. And to top it all off, Rose is also developing feelings for her mentor slash teacher, Dimitri. Listen, let me say this right now. I'm gonna get this out of the way in the intro because it is going to color the rest of this video. I do not like Dmitry Belikov. I have never liked Dmitry Belikov. I will never like Dmitry Belikov. And I certainly do not like the Rose and Dimitri romance. Even all those years ago when I was still a teenager reading these books for the first time, they kind of gave me the ick. Now that I'm nearly 24 reading these books, yeah, I hate it. So that's something that you should probably know before you continue watching this video. If you're like a really big fan of Rose and Dimitri, I don't know if you're gonna like what I have to say. I'm sorry. I'm telling you now, so your feelings don't get hurt. So without any further ado, let's jump into the summary of the first book in this series, very aptly called Vampire Academy. Okay, I took off the fangs, I'm wearing my Eddie Munson shirt, and I've got my fan. I'm ready. So my breakdown of the first book is likely going to be the longest and the most complicated because I have to break down this like vampire world for you, the different types of vampires, their abilities, etc. So let me just start off and do that from the very beginning. So in the Vampire Academy world, there are 3 different types of vampires. The first one being the Moroi, who are the good vampires. They are mortal, they are living and breathing, They think and act and feel like people, except they're full-blooded vampires. Within the population of Moroi vampires, there are also non-royal and royal vampires. There are 12 royal families, and those Moroi basically make up this like council and form of government, and they also have like an elected queen. Moroi vampires also are all capable of wielding elemental magic, so water, fire, air, and earth, and they are taught to wield this magic, except they are not allowed to use it offensively. They are only allowed to sort of just like be one with nature, and you know, you're not supposed to use it to fight, is what I'm getting at. Moroi vampires obviously need to drink blood. They can have human food, although it's like not really that much of a necessity for them. And they have these people called feeders, who are usually like humans who volunteer their blood, and they basically go, they have lunch, they suck someone's blood, and then they're off on their merry way. A vampire bite in this world produces a kind of like high and incredibly euphoric state for the person who is being bitten. The second group of vampires are called Dompiers. So Dompiers are created when a Moroi and a human sleep together, and in this world it is typically Moroi men who will sleep with Dampier women, and then that is how other Dompiers are made. Dompiers do not have any special abilities, although they are pretty like agile and, you know, pretty strong, and this is why they train to become guardians, guards for the Morois. The final group of vampires are called Strigoi, and these are the bad vampires. They're immortal, they're undead, they kill people and suck their blood for fun. They're bad. They're evil. What else can you say? Strigoi are not born, they are made and created, and there are multiple ways in which you can become a Strigoi. A Moroi vampire can turn into a Strigoi if they are drinking blood from someone and then kill them. Another way that Strigoi are forcefully made is when a Strigoi drinks from a victim and then forces that victim to drink Strigoi blood, then that person will then become Strigoi. Does that make sense? It's a little complicated, but you know, I'll continue to refresh your minds as we go throughout this series. So when the Vampire Academy series first begins, we are basically existing in a time where Moroi numbers are dwindling severely, and there are also less Dompiers being made, and thus less people to protect the Moroi from Strigoi. And of course this means that Strigoi numbers are going up, and there are actually a lot of Moroi who are just choosing to become Strigoi. Moroi, Strigoi, it all sounds so similar, and my lisp, I'm not having a good time. Lissa is a royal Moroi vampire. She's actually the last one of her bloodline and of her family, and Rose is her best friend and her guardian in training. At this point, the girls have been on the run. They ran away from the Vampire Academy, St. Vladimir's, a long time ago. They've been on the run since then, and Lissa wakes up because she had a nightmare, and Rose is like, what the hell's going on? And then they hear noises and they realize that they have been found out and someone is after them. So they pack up their shit and they start running. They are very soon caught by a guardian known as Dmitri Belikov. I need to actually like rein it back because I cannot grimace every single time I say this man's name because I'm gonna have a terrible time if that's the case. When they are on the plane back to St. Vladimir's, which is located in Montana, the reader also realizes that Lissa and Rose have this psychic bond wherein Rose can sort of feel everything that Lissa is feeling, and at times she can even like enter Lissa's mind when Lissa's emotions get really heightened. So the girls are taken back to school. They're punished severely, but Rose more so than anybody, and Rose is basically put on, I don't know, like probation. Basically, she can't go anywhere besides going to class and then going to these special trainings with Dmitri after classes because she has a lot to catch up on. She's been gone for months and she's very behind in her training. And Rose sort of agrees to this even though she's not happy with the arrangement because she really wants to be Lissa's guardian, but given that Lissa is a royal Moroi and that she is the only one left in her family, that's pretty high profile job, so she really has to put in the work if she wants to get that position. During this meeting, we get the sense from Lissa and Rose that something pretty major happened to cause them to run away from school and not return. We will eventually eventually get bits and pieces of what that is, but we don't get a full picture until the end of the book. We also find out that the reason that Lissa is the only living member of her family is because all of them were involved in an accident. Her parents and her older brother, who is actually the heir to the Dragomir family that she is a part of, all of them died in this accident except for Lissa. So they start back with classes. There are rumors running abound about where they went, why they left, what they're going to be like now that they're back. And during this time, Rose enters Lissa's mind when she is incredibly distraught and has run away to the attic of the church, the chapel, and that is where Lissa runs into Christian Ozera, who is another royal Moroi, and he is also from a family of which he is one of, I think, maybe just like a handful. Christian is a bit of an outsider because his parents willingly turned Strigoi, and they even tried to like come after him and take him with them, and then later in the future they were going to turn him Strigoi once he got older, but instead a bunch of Dompiers and Guardians intercepted his parents and killed them right in front of him. So Christian is kind of like assumed to be like a Strigoi in the making. Everyone's like, okay, he's dark and he's weird and no one likes him. So he's an outsider. Him and Lissa start talking. Rose is seeing this through Lissa's eyes. And during this conversation, Christian figures out what no one else on campus has, which is that during the time that they ran away, Rose acted as Lissa's feeder. So anytime that Lissa needed blood, Rose would be the one to give it to her. And that is pretty taboo because in this world, there is a very strong stigma around Dompier women in particular giving blood to Moroi. Earlier I mentioned that Dompiers are often created when Moroi men will sleep with Dompier women, and basically Dompier women have this sort of like stigma around them that they're known as blood whores. They let Moroi men suck their blood while they're sleeping with them, and it's not something you're supposed to do. And it's very slut-shamey. There are themes of slut-shaming all over this series. Just be prepared for that. Rose actually decides to start attending church because that is basically the only like extracurricular activity she can partake in because of her probation. And while she is there, she hears the priest talk about a Saint Vladimir, who was a Moroi vampire. And he talks about him having this like guardian and companion named Anna, who was, quote, shadow-kissed. And Rose is very intrigued by that. She goes up to the priest and is like, hey, what exactly does that mean? And she discovers that Saint Vladimir had healing capabilities. And we find out that this is also a power that Lissa has. More on that later. Like I said, we only get like bits and pieces of what's going on with Lissa, why they left. Like you get like little crumbs and inklings throughout the book. So that's what we know so far. Now we jump to Rose doing like a training session with Dimitri. And during that training session, Rose is pulled into Lissa's mind and she is so overcome. Lissa is, and I guess Rose is also as well because she's feeling her emotions, totally overcome, and there's just like a feeling of danger, and so Rose goes to her and they discover a fox with a slit throat on her bed. They don't know who put it there, but it freaks Lissa out. She's very sensitive to animals and all sources of life, and we learn that apparently back a few years ago, Lissa actually found a dead, was it a raven or a crow? One of those birds. And she healed it and brought it back to life. Now this obviously really shocked and freaked Rose out, and there was actually a teacher at the school at that time named Miss Carp who also witnessed this and told Rose and Lissa, this can never happen again. They are going to come after Lissa. Make sure that she never uses her powers again. She tells that to Rose. Another scene that I really want to bring up, even though it's not really important to the plot, but I'm going to mention it anyway. During one of the classes, there's this Moroi guy who is taunting Rose and Lissa, and suddenly this dude just like bursts into flames. And he's like freaking out, trying to get the fire out. Everyone's like, what the fuck? And then quickly the flames go out. And you realize that Christian, who is a fire magic user, lit him on fire and then like took out the flames immediately just to like fuck with him. That's my boy. Listen, when I first read this series, I was a Christian girly, and to this day I still am. This man just casually lit someone on fire for even thinking to talk to Lissa the wrong way. I'm not even gonna preface this by saying that I'm sorry or that I know it's an unpopular opinion, because I know that I'm right. Like deep in my soul, I know that I'm correct. And I'm correct in my opinion and my belief that Lissa and Christian are superior to Rose and Dimitri. It's just how the cookie fucking crumbles. Anyway, moving on. Not that important of a scene, but important to me because Christian and Lissa. Rose actually enters Lissa's mind for the first time, because usually she just gets like pulled in there whenever Lissa is like feeling a really heightened emotion, but this time she actually manages to like go into Lissa's mind of her own accord, and she sees Lissa talking to Christian about what happened. During this conversation, Christian mentions that he believes that Moroi need to start using their magic offensively, and that they have to start like standing up to the Strigoi themselves, which is something that will come up in later books, so hold on to that little nugget. So later on, Rose meets up with a Moroi boy. Oh god. I'm so dumb. So easily entertained. She meets up with this Moroi guy named Jesse, and they start making out, and, you know, they're doing their thing, you know? And then Dimitri suddenly, like, storms in, pulls Jesse off of her, sends him away, and... God, okay, here it comes. The first, like, big gripe that I have with this man. And I have many. This man threatens Jesse, and then proceeds to slut-shame Rose? Let me say that again. This 24, yes, let that sink in, 24-year-old man. I remember when I first read this series, I remember that Dimitri was older than her, and that was, like, something that I didn't like. But 24? 24 and she's 17. Yes, 911, we got him. Also, what makes this scene even worse is that you know that the reason he barged in there was also, like, born of jealousy. No. Okay, listen. If you need to know something about me, it's the fact that I hate teacher romances. I can't do it. It's one of my, like, hard lines. I think because I've worked as a tutor, as a teacher, it just really, that in particular, like, I can't do it. I can't do it. A little while later, the Moroi queen, Tatiana, comes to the school, and she sees Lissa and basically, like, berates her and chastises her for running away in front of everybody. It is this really huge, just, like, knock to Lissa and her character, especially her being, like, the only person left of the Dragomir family. That very same night, Lissa also finds a dead rabbit in the bathroom. Rose is, I believe, in her head, seeing this. And Lissa ends up self-harming. And Rose is, like, so convinced that Christian is the one doing these terrible things, and she dislikes him so much that she goes up to Christian and says, listen, Lissa doesn't like you, she pities you, and, like, stop hanging around her and being pathetic. And Christian believes her, and even though he was on his way to go see Lissa, he turns around and just walks away. Not too long after, this girl named Mia Rinaldi, who is a Moroi, but not a royal Moroi, she really hates Lissa and Rose because in the time that they were gone, Mia became popular and started dating Lissa's ex-boyfriend, Aaron, and she feels threatened by Lissa coming back, and basically, yeah, that's what you need to know. Mia is a little bit important, which is why I gave you that rundown. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bothered. Mia spreads a rumor that Rose hooked up with Jesse and this other Moroi guy, Ralph, and she let them suck her blood while they were hooking up, which, like I mentioned, is like a big taboo. Honestly, you could make a drinking game out of every single time that Rose gets slut-shamed in this book alone, but I don't want you to do that, because you would have been drunk by, like, the 50th page. So in retaliation for the rumors that are being spread about Rose, Lissa decides to use the power of compulsion, which all Moroi have, but Lissa is able to do it on a scale that no one else can. So she starts going around and, I was about to say compulsorizing. Compulsing? What's the word? What's the conjugation of that verb? Anyway, she's compelling! Oh my god. Y'all, I'm supposed to be getting an English degree and graduating in about a year. Please do not show anyone that clip of me, because if you do, I will not be walking across that stage. I will not be getting that diploma. That's embarrassing. Lissa is compelling everyone and saying that rumor isn't true. Mia made it up because she hates us. Also, Rose was, yes, she was my feeder while we were running away and, you know, we were away from the academy, but it's, like, not that big of a deal, is it? And everyone's like, oh yeah, Lissa, you're so right. And Lissa takes things another step further. She wants to really get back at Mia, so she starts dating Aaron again, even though she doesn't like him at all. She's, like, hanging out with all the popular, vapid Moroi kids, even though she hates them, and Rose is becoming increasingly worried about her. Lissa and Rose then get invited to a party, and while they are there, a boy named Xander starts asking Rose about being Lissa's feeder, and Lissa gets really pissed and basically compels him to drop it. And Rose is like shocked that Lissa would use her powers so flagrantly and in front of so many people, and she flashes back to years ago before they ran away, a similar situation where they were at a party. Rose was drinking, even though she usually doesn't because she likes to be alert around Lissa. She's making out with a guy, and then Lissa comes up to her because these other Moroi guys brought this one human girl, a feeder, into the party and were basically like feeding off of her, and she was like I said, when you bite someone, they get like a high. So they've bitten her so many times that she's like completely out of it and basically just like drugged. And Lissa is like, this is fucking weird. This is gross. They're violating her. They're taking advantage. Rose, we need to do something about it. And, Rose. She basically is like, yeah, like, I know that it's bad, but there's nothing that we can really do about it. Like, I'm not liking Rose's response. At all. Anyway, Lissa decides to take matters into her own hands, like the bad bitch that she is, and she goes to the room of the guy who took that feeder girl. So he basically, like, took her because Lissa was saying, like, what the fuck, you shouldn't be doing this. So he took the feeder girl to his room. So Lissa goes to the room, and she compels the guy to take a bat to everything in his room. Like, trash the fucking place. And then she's basically tells him to turn the bat on himself, and, like, basically has him ready to bash his own head in. And all I have to say is, let her do it. Rose comes in and she's like, Lissa, this isn't you. And in her head, she's like, Lissa was scaring me. And I'm like, what? I see no problem. Rose snaps Lissa out of it, even though in my mind, I don't think she needed to be snapped out of anything. And 2 days later, Rose basically goes in the night to Lissa's room, says, hey, we're getting out of here, and they run away. And that's like the story of what happened. So during the present timeline, Rose is doing a lot more digging into St. Vladimir and his past, and she finds out that he never specialized in an element like most Moroi are supposed to do. She also finds out that Miss Carp never specialized, and Lissa also has never specialized before. So Rose presents Lissa with this theory that maybe she, Miss Carp, and St. Vladimir had some kind of like unknown power because they have a lot of similarities in being able to heal things and bring people back from like near death or injury, and also being able to compel people. A little while later, Lissa, Rose, and Natalie, who is Lissa's cousin and roommate, all get together and they go to the mall and they're picking out dresses and shopping for an upcoming dance. And Natalie's father, Victor, aka Lissa's uncle, and he's kind of like someone in Lissa's life that's been looking after her, taking care of her since her parents died. He is there basically funding their trip. And at one point during this excursion, we figure out the final piece in the Miss Carp tale, which is that she actually willingly turns Strigoi. And Rose wonders if she did this to sort of like shut off her humanity and her powers, whatever they were, because Miss Carp was struggling with mental illness, undiagnosed, and Rose also sees Lissa struggling in a similar way and starts to become a bit afraid, wondering if Lissa will eventually go down the same path. Rose and Lissa are then walking along and talking. Rose hops onto this bench, and then it suddenly gives, and her leg falls through, and she passes out from the pain. And when she comes to, she's sure that she like at least broke her foot, but when she looks down at it, she realizes that there's just a bit of redness, a bit of a sprain, and it becomes very apparent that Lissa healed her ankle. Dimitri is there beside her at the clinic, and he gives her a gift from Uncle Victor, Lissa's uncle, and it's basically this rose pendant that Rose and Lissa were looking at the mall, but they couldn't afford. He bought it for her and basically gives her a note saying, you know, I wish you a speedy recovery, and it seems like you have like a guardian angel out there, someone looking after you. Rose figures out that it was Lissa that healed her foot, and she sort of like enters Lissa's mind and wants to see where she is, and discovers that she is back in the chapel and that Christian is there as well, and they get into an argument. And Christian, during this argument, reveals that her older brother, Andre, whom she really looked up to and is really aspiring to be, remember, he was the heir before her, so she's trying to live up to his legacy. Christian tells her that Andre was actually kind of a piece of shit at school. Yeah, he was nice to her, yeah, he was a good brother and loved her, but he was a bully, he was mean, and he actually was hooking up with that girl Mia, who currently really despises Lissa and is obsessed with popularity. Andre was hooking up with her and then unceremoniously dumped her because she was not from a good family, not from a royal family. Lissa doesn't really believe him, and then they get into this back and forth fight over like popularity and the importance of appearance, and at some point Christian just like angrily kisses her to like prove a point that she doesn't care about Aaron, whom she's back together with, and that she's just putting on a show, pretending to care about popularity and all these things. And not gonna lie, it was a little iconic. It was a little iconic and far superior to anything Dimitri and Rose have ever done, will ever do. Not too long after this, Lissa and Rose end up in a fight and they're not really talking to each other. Honest to God, kind of blanked on this, can't remember why exactly they were fighting, but they're fighting, they're not talking, and now everyone is kind of like shitting on Rose again, making up rumors, avoiding her, etc. Now this guy Mason, who is one of Rose's closest friends, he's a classmate of hers, also studying to be a guardian, he's adorable, I love Mason, and it's also very obvious that he has a bit of a crush on Rose. He shows up to her door and says like, come on, let's go to the dance together, we can go to the after parties together, like I'll be by your side the whole night, no one will talk shit about you, and if they do, I'll handle them. I love Mason. I really do. Mason also gets Ralph and Jesse to admit to Rose that they made up the whole rumor of her sleeping with them, and that they did it because Mia actually slept with them in order for them to spread the rumor. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't like the way that Rose handles this. Like, listen, Rose gets a lot of shit. She is slut-shamed constantly by people simply because of, like, her body type and because, like, she's a Dompier and she's kind of, like, out there and flirty and that's just, like, kind of her personality. She gets a lot of shit. She gets slut-shamed a lot. I don't agree with that. But I also don't like the way that she slut-shames Mia. Like, she finds out this information and then, like, uses that against Mia. And, like, it's just, I don't like it. Like, why is there so much slut-shaming from every character? Mia then retaliates by exposing the fact that Lissa is currently taking medication for her mental illness as yet undiagnosed, and Rose gets so angry that she punches her, and then Rose gets hauled away and thrown out of the party. Lissa also goes running off, and Christian tries to go after her, and because Lissa is like feeling all these heightened emotions, embarrassment, humiliation, all these things, Rose goes into her body and she witnesses Lissa being kidnapped by a bunch of people claiming to be guardians. Now Rose then goes to Dimitri's room to tell him what's happening, but when she's there, she's suddenly like completely overcome with like desire for him and like completely forgets about Lissa. She comes on to him pretty severely, and then, oh God, please, I don't even want to talk about this. I really don't want to, I don't want to talk about this. I don't even want to like remember this or think about it ever again. They end up like making out and in bed together. I know that there is discourse to be had surrounding age gaps, particularly in fantasy and sci-fi and paranormal romance. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of these YA girlies are like teenagers and they're, you know, paired up with these like 100-year-old, 1,000-year-old men, basically, who are just like stuck in like 17-year-old bodies. I'm not gonna get into all that discourse or weigh in either way, but I know that people are gonna argue and be like, well, you ship those romances, so what's wrong with Rose and Dimitri? When I see a 1,000-year-old vampire, like that is so outside the realm of possibility. Like when am I ever gonna meet someone who's even like 100 years old? Like never in my life. Like it's so outside the realm of possibility, it's like unfathomable. But this, a 24-year-old instructor taking advantage of his 17-year-old child student, that's very real. I don't like it. Especially because you'll see throughout the series, they are constantly bringing it up. They are constantly bringing up this fucking age gap. I fucking never read another book that brings it up this much, that cares about this so much. Like, you keep shoving it in my face. So what am I supposed to do about it? Like, I have to talk about it. And I have to talk about how I fucking hate it. At one point, Dimitri takes the rose necklace off of Rose, and she just like immediately snaps out of it. She's like, what the fuck is going on? Why am I in bed with Dimitri? Girl, I'm wondering the same thing. Run away. Basically, they figure out the necklace has been charmed. Basically, like, it makes them want each other and forget about important things, like Lissa. So Dimitri throws the necklace out, and then they, like, snap back to reality, and they're like, okay, we gotta go find Lissa. While they are speeding around, trying to find her, Rose will periodically go into Lissa's mind to try to see where she is, and she sees Lissa tied up and being, like, tortured by these, like, Moroi magic users, and then she realizes that Lissa has been taken by Victor Dashkov, Lissa's uncle, Natalie's dad. Victor explains that he knows that Lissa has healing powers and that he wants her to use them on him because he has a terminal illness, and he wants her to heal him, and he wants to become the ruler of the Moroi because he doesn't think that the current queen and current government is doing enough to fight against Strigoi, and he wants to change that. He also reveals that his daughter Natalie, Lissa's roommate and cousin and, you know, kind of friend, has been the one planting these dead animals, and she's been doing that so that Lissa will hopefully, like, heal them, and then Victor will have, like, concrete proof that she can heal people. And basically all this started years ago with that accident that killed Lissa's family. Rose was apparently there as well. And with Rose's injuries, with the way that that accident happened, Rose should have died, but she didn't. And Lissa is the one that brought her back to life, and that is what created their psychic bond. Victor actually gives a name to Lissa's powers, which is that of spirit. And Lissa is like, freaked the fuck out. She's like, no way, I'm not gonna do that. But he basically continues to torture her physically until she gives in. She heals him. He like automatically like just looks so much better and is healthier. And he basically says that he's just gonna keep her as like his own little like pick-me-up girl. Like she's always gonna be there just to heal him. So Dimitri and Rose show up. Dimitri goes to get Lissa and Rose is left behind. And then we find out that Christian, that's my boy, he's stowed away. And so him and Rose go to try to find Lissa, and they get attacked by these things called Psyhounds. It doesn't matter. I'm not gonna explain. There's some type of animal, basically. Anyway, they attack Christian, and he's like really badly injured. And Lissa shows up, and she is trying to heal him, but she's used so much of her magic. So then Rose says, okay, like bite me, get, you know, energy. So Lissa does, and then she heals Christian. When everything is said and done and they're back at St. Vladimir's, Rose goes and confronts Dimitri, and she says, you know, like, what the hell happened? And he responds by saying that it was just the spell, and that she is perfectly within her rights to report him, which, absolutely, yes, that is the one and only time that this man has spoken since. Victor is locked up. Rose goes to see him because she wants to basically say, like, okay, can you, like, break the spell already? Because, like, I still really want Dimitri, but he doesn't want me. And then Victor is like, oh, there was no spell. All it did was make you act on the attraction that was already there. Then the book gets really interesting because Natalie shows up to free her father, and she has turned Strigoi willingly. And she's done this basically for, like, her father's cause. It's actually kind of sad, but, like, fucked up and, like, kind of cool. Natalie manages to incapacitate Rose, and then right when it seems like she's gonna get the better of her, Dimitri comes in and kills her and saves Rose. This series is at its best when it's, like, leaning heavily into, like, the fighting and the vampire shit and the politics. But then it always gets, like, fucking taken over by the Dimitri-Rose romance. And you know what? Maybe I would like it better if I actually gave a fuck, but I think it's been heavily established that I don't. In fact, I hate it. Anyway, Rose says that she knows that Dimitri likes her back, and then he says that they can't be together, and she's like, oh, is it because of the age gap? Dimitri then says, yeah, like, it's the age gap, but also, like, you and me are gonna be bodyguards for Lissa in the future, and if I'm more worried about saving you, I can't do my job properly, and, like, that would be good. Like, that would be, like, a good source of angst if it wasn't a relationship between a child and an adult. I'm gonna keep saying it. I'm gonna keep saying it until you're as uncomfortable as I am. Anyway, the book ends with Lissa and Christian together, and they're like the it couple, like sunshine grumpy, incredible, and like everyone's jealous of them and talking shit, but they don't even care. They're so happy and in love. Thank God. Thank God they're my bright spot in this series. And then Rose also finds out that St. Vladimir was able to live a healthy and happy life with the help of shadow-kissed Anna, and obviously Rose is Lissa's shadow-kissed partner and companion, so yeah, it was a pretty cute ending. I have to say that just like looking forward to the Peacock show, I can already tell that it's going to be superior to the books because I actually like Rose and Dimitri already. Like, thank God they aged him down or they aged her up, whatever way they did it. Thank God. Have you seen Rose and Dimitri in the show? Those are some good looking people, okay? It's a good looking couple. And they're age appropriate for each other. Hello, it's me. I'm back, even though you just saw me. And I'm back with more pimples and less hair. I also didn't even realize this, but I'm kind of like low-key matching my outfits to different book covers. Like, I was wearing like red, orange, black with like the first book, and now I'm wearing this like dark blue ensemble. Look at me. So the first thing I want to say is that in every single book in this series, Rochelle Mead will have a lot of like exposition and explanation about the vampiric world that she's created. In this book, I believe it's the most heavy-handed because we get like an entire 4 to 5 page prologue in which Rose basically explains everything that happened in the first book, which I suppose is good if she wants to like remind her readers who are waiting like a year or so in between the releases what all happened. But as someone who's marathoning this series, it can be annoying and a bit tedious. So the story actually begins with Rose and Dimitri driving a couple hours away to go see this world-renowned Dhampir guardian who is now retired and is protecting a certain royal family. I believe that Rose is meant to talk to this man and go through some kind of test for her guardian training. But once they arrive at this house, they realize that there has been a Strigoi attack. And all the Dhampirs, every single member of that royal family, has been murdered. And this is particularly shocking because these people have been dead for a few days, which means that they were killed during the day. And Strigoi, being immortal and undead, can't go out in the sunlight. So they quickly figure out that they possibly had the help of humans. There is also a message written in blood on one of the walls saying that there will be more killings and that they're basically coming for all of the Moroi royal families. They return to campus and obviously the word is spread about this incident and this attack, and all the royal Morois are freaking out. They want to pull their kids out of school, go somewhere safe, go into hiding, and a decision is made that all of the Morois, all the royal ones mostly, are going to go and live in this like ski lodge, and they're going to like bring a bunch of Dhampirs to protect them. Which I don't know about you guys, but I personally think is a terrible idea, because you're basically making it that much easier for the Strigoi to know where to attack. Like, you're making them sitting ducks, like pigs for the slaughter, all in this one place. Now, it's not only the students who are coming to stay at this resort, it is extended Moroi families. And in all the like hustle and bustle, Dimitri introduces Christian's aunt, Natasha Ozera, to Rose. And Rose sees that she has some scarring on her face, and this is the result of Christian's parents. Remember, they turned Strigoi willingly, and they tried to come and take Christian to have him live with them and then eventually turn him Strigoi once he got older. Natasha was there, she fought them off, but in the struggle, she got these scars. And just like Christian, she is ostracized, but Dimitri has a good relationship with her, a very close friendship. Now, in this book, we also get introduced to Rose's mother, who, of course, is coming to protect all of the Moroi, and basically Rose's mom, like, gave birth to her, and then basically let the other Dhampirs and guardians in schools raise her. She went back to being, like, a guardian. So Rose has some bitter feelings about that, and while her mother is talking to all the, like, novices, aka up-and-coming guardians who are still studying, Rose is in the room, and she just starts making like really snarky comments while her mother is talking, and then eventually she's just like so disrespectful that she gets kicked out. Throughout the book, there's also this recurring issue of Rose's jealousy when it comes to Lissa and Christian. Basically, Lissa is spending all this time with Christian, you know, they're in the honeymoon phase, they're totally in love, and Rose is not really a fan of Lissa having someone in her life who is so close to her. It's immature and it's petty, yes, but at the same time I understand it because I remember being 17 and being in high school, and anytime that I even saw my best friend interact with someone else, I would get so insecure and like scared, being like, oh shit, like they're my best friend, but what if I'm not their best friend? Oh my god, what if they like other people more than me? So I'm gonna let it slide because that's relatable. At one point while Dimitri and Rose are training, I'm not exactly sure what happens. If there's one thing you need to know about me, it's that anytime that I am listening to, because I am listening to these books on audio, anytime that I'm listening to a scene between Dimitri and Rose, I tune out. I tune out, I crank that shit up to like 2.7 or even 3 times speed, and I just zone the fuck out because I don't care. It makes me uncomfortable. the Rose and Dimitri hate train continues. At one point, she says something to him that's like kind of taunting and suggestive, and he gets really upset, and then they end up like kissing really angrily. After this kiss, Rose decides that maybe it's time that she gives her friend Mason an actual shot, and that she tries to have some kind of relationship with him, because he's cute, he's nice, he's her age, and he really likes her, and, you know, everything going on with Dimitri is, she just thinks that it's, like, annoying and they can never be together, so she should try to have a normal relationship. Not too long after this, it is Christmas time, and everyone's unwrapping presents, and Rose's mom ends up giving her an evil eye pendant. Except her mom doesn't, like, explain what that is, and Rose also doesn't know what that is, and I find that so shocking, because I feel like you don't even have to be, like, in this case, like, Turkish, Middle Eastern, what have you, to, like, know what an evil eye pendant is. Like, I feel like it's just, like, it's very common. That kind of leads me down this path of, like, another issue that I have with this series, which is Rose's heritage and ethnicity. Like, she's meant to be half Turkish, right? Her dad is Turkish. And as much as I, like, appreciate the Middle Eastern rep, I also feel like, ooh, how do I phrase this? I feel like Rose's Turkish heritage is only really brought up in a sense to, exoticize? I should really know the words. I mean, call myself an English major. Even when I was reading this book for the first time when I was like, 19, I think, I just remember, like, it's like, you never even remember that she was Turkish. Like, it was only ever brought up when they were, like, discussing her looks, when they were talking about how she's like, oh, I'm half Turkish, and that's where I get my dark hair and my curves, and, you know, my olive skin, and all the guys want me. Like, it's only brought up in terms of her looks, and it's not really, like, a part of her character in any other meaningful way, which I guess makes sense because her father is Turkish and she doesn't really know her father. But yeah, it's just something that, like, I've noticed and I'm not a big fan of. And not to jump ahead, but I'm currently reading the third book, and there is, like, one point in which Rose refers to herself as, like, exotic looking. It's not so heavy-handed that, like, it ruins the book for me, but it just, every time it gets brought up, it gives me a slight ick, you know? After going on that whole tangent, let me bring it back to the Rose conversation with her mother. Her name's Janine, by the way. I probably should have mentioned that. But her and Janine are talking, and Janine mentions that Natasha Ozera has offered Dimitri a job to be her personal guard. And she also insinuates that if he does take that job, there could be certain perks and benefits, i.e. Natasha and him will be in a relationship and potentially have, like, a kid together, another dumpier child. And of course, this sends Rose into, like, a total tailspin. And despite the fact that she was, like, previously really admired Natasha, because Natasha actually knows how to fight like a guardian, like, after the attack with Christian's parents, she wanted to learn how to fight. Rose really admired her, but then the second that she hears this, she is just like, fuck Natasha. Not too long after this conversation, we are then introduced to everyone's favorite Moroi, Adrian Ivashkov. And this man, for anyone who doesn't know, like, he is the guy. Like, I think we all know that in every single series, there's always, like, the guy. Well, he's the guy in this series. I mean, he was so popular, he got his own damn spin-off with a new love interest that went on for 6 books, too. So he is kind of the it guy out here. However, after coming back to this series with older, more withered eyes, I do have gripes. I have gripes. And my main gripe, oh god, this keeps happening in the series, is the fact that Adrian is a 21-year-old man who is openly flirting with, very unabashedly, and saying sexual things to an underage Rose Hathaway. Why are we doing this? Why does this keep happening? Like, it's a recurring issue in this series. I like Adrian as much as the next girl, but if I'm gonna come down on Dimitri and his weird ass, then I also have to come down on Adrian. So, weird. Weird, 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 weird. So during this conversation between Adrian and Rose, he brings up Lissa and about wanting to speak to her, and we get the impression that he is particularly interested in her spirit powers and wants to know more about that. Later on that night, while Rose is asleep, she enters this, like, dream-like space, at least she believes that it's a dream, where she sees Adrian, and they have, like, a whole conversation about Lissa's spirit powers, and Rose, thinking that this is a dream, ends up just, like, spilling her guts about Lissa and her abilities. And during this dream, Adrian also mentions to Rose that she has this, like, dark aura around her because she is shadow-kissed. Not too long after this, there is another Strigoi attack on a group of families, and since all of the Moroi are in the ski resort, they all come together and sort of hold this like council meeting. And they're trying to figure out how to respond to this threat. Some people want to go away from the resort and go into hiding with their own guardians. And then Natasha speaks up, and she proposes that they start using their magic to fight alongside Dampiers, and the whole room just like fucking explodes. Everyone is freaking the hell out. During Natasha's speech to the entire room, Rose watches as Dimitri looks at her with like, I guess something akin to awe on his face, and she gets really angry, and when they go outside of the room, Rose confronts him and just says like a lot of petty shit about how, you know, he obviously wants to sleep with her. And she also makes a comment that he must be really into age gaps, considering that Natasha is 7 years older than him and Rose is 7 years younger than him. And I just I'm sorry, oh my god, I shouldn't laugh. It's like so funny to me because she's saying this as like a way to point out like, oh, you're so gross, like you're only into older women and younger women, which like, if he wants to date Natasha, fuck it, I don't care. I actually, honest to god, like kind of, I prefer that dynamic. Like I would have shipped the hell out of that if it became a real thing. But it's the fact that she's like using their age gap against him, basically like trying to like insinuate that he's a creep, and I'm just sitting there like, yes, exactly. Yes, exactly? Like, what is the joke here? Like, I don't... you're just... Yeah. That's exactly what he is. Like, he's a weirdo. And then... Ooh, okay, I haven't even gotten to the worst part yet. He then responds by saying, yes, and you are basically showing me right now, like, the proof of that age gap by how, like, immature you're being. And Rose and Dimitri will have these kinds of, like, arguments and blow-ups about their age difference, and then they'll always, like, make up by Rose saying something like, oh, like, we just, like, get each other and understand each other. Or Dimitri will, like, flat out tell her, like, you're wise beyond your years, you know more things in your, you know, young age than most people learn in their lifetimes, which reeks of she's mature for her age, and I fucking hate it. Rose and Dimitri are always getting into these arguments about their age gap, and I feel like the author wants me to be like, no, like, despite the age gap, like, they're meant to be together, and, like, it's so romantic, and it's, like, it's keeping them apart, but, like, no, like, it's weird. Like, the thing you are arguing about is correct. It is valid, and you should break up, even if you're not together. This should never have even started. Like, it's so weird, and I don't like it. Oh my god, I feel like the majority of this video is just me complaining about Rose and Dimitri. Like, I can't do it, you guys. I really can't. Rose is then gifted a ginormous box of perfume by Adrian. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because the next morning she goes to Adrian's door to return the box, and there she finds Lissa, and they are both like equally shocked to see each other there. And then Christian shows up and is like, what the hell, to seeing Lissa in Adrian's room so early in the morning, and he is also very jealous of like the Adrian-Lissa like companionship that's going on. Later on, Lissa takes Rose as like her date to this Moroi dinner and event, and while she's there, Lissa ends up talking to a bunch of other royal Morois about offensive magic, and she says that she's in support of it and believes that any Moroi who wish to learn, you know, how to use their magic in an offensive way should be able to do it, and that they should go through like training and lessons in the same way that Dampiers do. And she sort of gets caught up in that conversation, and during that time Rose's mother comes over and like drags her out of the party and just like goes off on her about the dress she's wearing, basically like slut shaming her. Once again, this happens so often to Rose, it pisses me off. After this big blow-up fight, Dimitri comes over and comforts Rose, and then Rose tells him to take the job with Natasha. And it is finally at this point that Rose realizes that she needs to like fully cut things off with Mason, because she'll never feel for him what she feels for Dimitri. Unfortunately. Mason, my guy. Love him. So Rose goes to Mason's door and realizes that he is not there. And she realizes that Mason, Eddie, another Dampier novice, and Mia, whom, if you remember, she's that non-royal Moroi girl from the first book who was always like out to get Rose and Lissa. Well, something I forgot to mention is that Mia's parents were killed in that Strigoi attack. So she wants revenge. So she tags along with the two guys to go to this like Strigoi hiding place that the Dompiers and Guardians have found but haven't told anyone about. Now Rose ends up enlisting the help of Christian. They eventually catch up with the group who went down into these like tunnels where the Strigoi were meant to be but didn't find anything. And basically they convince Rose like, hey, let's go back and like check it out one last time, and nothing's down there, it's fine. But then when they go down, Rose sees on this like wall a bunch of like letters, and she figures out that they stand for the first letter in all of the royal family names, and she realizes that this actually is the lair of the Strigoi and they need to get the hell out of there. However, it is in that exact moment that two Strigoi show up and they take the whole group as captives. And thus begins, you know, several days of captivity in which none of them are fed or given water. And this is especially bad for Christian and Mia, who are Moroi, because they need blood to survive, and they're becoming increasingly weak and more susceptible to their baser urges. Also, throughout these couple of days, Eddie is being constantly fed on by the Strigoi and is like totally high out of his mind because of the bites. Now, during this time of captivity, Rose ends up having another dream where Adrian shows up, and we find out that he actually also has the powers of spirit, and he can like dream walk. So they're actually having a conversation in this dream, and he starts asking her like, what's going on? Where are you? He explains that he can see like the auras of people, and that her aura is very dark, whereas Lissa's aura is like golden, which means that she, you know, is touched by spirit. Now, Rose doesn't manage to tell him where she is in time because then she wakes up. Now, Rose and Christian come up with this plan sort of like silently between the two of them. Basically, the Strigoi said that Christian or Mia has to decide to drink from one of their Dompier friends, and then they'll potentially let them go. So Christian's like, okay, hey, I'll drink. I'm thirsty, like, let me out of these restraints. So they do. He goes over to Rose and like pretends to bite her. Meanwhile, he's using his fire abilities to loosen her restraints and get them off. She manages to break free, and she ends up stabbing one of the captors, and the whole group manages to get out of their bindings and get out of there, but they're not really sure like which way to go. They don't know where the two Strigoi are. And Rose basically sort of decides to stay behind. She says to the rest of the group, just go, I'll take care of it. And she runs into those other two Strigoi, and she's basically getting beaten up. And that's when Mason shows up to try to help Rose and save her. But before Rose can even react, before anyone can say anything, before you as the reader even comprehend that Mason showed up, his neck gets snapped immediately. And Rose just absolutely sees red. She starts going after these two Strigoi. She manages to find this like rusty sword and starts like hacking away at the Strigoi. And Mia ends up coming back, and she actually uses her water magic to like choke or like kind of like halfway drown one of the Strigoi so that Rose can chop his head off. And Rose ends up chopping both their heads off in this really gruesome way. Like, she's just hacking at their heads like she's going on a rampage. And I'm gonna be honest, it's very iconic. It's very iconic. I have to say that this ending, as much as I love Mason, like, it really raises the stakes in this series and sort of changes the tone to become that much darker. And it's in moments like these, it's because of like action-packed sequences like these that I remember why I enjoyed this series so much and how good it can be. Now, Rose is so angry and just so hopped up on adrenaline and anger and grief that she doesn't even notice when Dimitri, her mother, and a bunch of other guardians show up. She thinks that they're still Strigoi, and she's just sort of standing over Mason's body with the sword, telling them all to stay away. Eventually, she comes to when Dimitri starts calling her name, and she just like completely just like loses it, collapses, can't take it. Everyone is then taken back to the academy, and Rose ends up getting what are called Molnia marks, which are like these little tattoos on the back of your neck, and you get one for every Strigoi that you kill. And so Rose gets 2 of these Molnia marks. And it's a very somber occasion for her because, you know, yes, she got Strigoi kills, but she also lost a very, very close friend and someone whom, you know, really loved her. And she also feels guilty because she didn't love him back and was in fact going to tell him that before he died. In the final moments of this book, Lissa ends up telling Rose that Adrian is going to be sticking around and that they are going to try to master their spirit skills together. And Dimitri ends up coming to Rose and telling her that he turned Natasha's offer down because he could never feel for Natasha what he feels for Rose, and then they kiss. Cool. Anyway, the ending is iconic aside from, you know, that final scene. I really like it when this series decides to go dark. I mean, I'm a big fan of like darker fantasy in general, and I feel like just that imagery of Rose like going so in like beast that she just like hacks off these heads with these rusty swords. Like, I cannot tell you guys how much like I enjoy this ending. Like, it's sad, but like I said, it raises the stakes. It made me immediately want to pick up the next book. So this book opens up on Rose, who seems to be having a dream and then very quickly realizes that she is actually inside of Lissa's mind and body as she is starting to be intimate with Christian. So she kind of freaks out and decides to get up in the middle of the night, or I guess the middle of the day, because the vampires and everyone on campus sleeps during the day and they go out and have classes at night. She wakes up, she's walking around, and she runs into Dimitri, and he lets her know that he has to press pause on their trainings because he is trying to prep for Viktor Dashkov's trial. And Rose is obviously very intrigued and also very shocked to hear that he's not being immediately thrown in prison after what he did to Lissa. And she also learns from Dimitri that she, Lissa, Christian are not going to be called to testify, even though they were the victims and directly saw what was happening, and she's very upset by this. It's right after this conversation that Rose believes that in the distance she sees Mason. He is pale, he is slightly gaunt, and he has a very sad expression on his face, and he's pointing to a particular part of campus, and Rose like absolutely freaks out, and just as quickly as he was there, he vanishes. Now, during this time, a few months before graduation, all of the novice Dompiers are going to be participating in what's known as field training. So they are tasked with protecting a certain Moroi student. They're assigned to them. You basically have to guard them against staged Strigoi attacks. Now, Rose is obviously very excited for this, and she is just totally set on having Lissa. She figures, I'm basically a shoo-in for Lissa's guardian, so we're obviously gonna get matched. But it turns out that she is not matched to Lissa and is instead matched to Christian, which I totally forgot even happened, but it's a little iconic that that happened because Rose and Christian don't really get along, probably because they are so familiar and are both constantly vying for Lissa's attention. And the person who does get assigned to Lissa is Eddie, whom you may remember from the end of the last book. He is one of the captives who was constantly being bitten and fed on by the Strigoi. He was best friends with Mason, so Eddie and Rose have like, a pretty solid bond. And even though she's upset and, raises hell and makes a bit of a fuss over not getting Lissa, she's ultimately glad that at least it is Eddie who is, protecting her for the field experiment. They go about their day and they see a lot of these staged attacks. And then finally, when it's Rose's turn and Christian is the one who is fake attacked, she is about to jump into action and then suddenly sees Mason again and just totally freezes. And she gets in trouble for this because they believe, the Dompier guardians and the teachers, they believe that she did this out of spite, that she purposefully did not protect Christian, and she gets really upset at this accusation, saying that that's not something that she would do. Whether or not she likes Christian or is upset about the assignment, she would try to protect him no matter what. And she doesn't reveal the truth to them. In fact, she even talks alone with Dimitri after this and decides not to tell him the truth about seeing Mason. So later on, Christian and Rose are waiting in line for the feeding. They basically have this room full of human feeders, and Christian usually goes to see this senile older woman named Alice. They're waiting in line basically, and Jesse and Ralph, whom you may remember, Jesse's the guy that Rose made out with in the first book. They're the ones that spread the rumor about Rose being a blood whore. They approach Christian and they say hey, you know, you're the kind of person who needs good connections. Even though you are like a tainted Ozera, you're still part of the royal bloodline. And, you know, come be part of our like secret society of, you know, royal Morroys, and we're trying to like influence the government. Christian obviously turns them down, and him and Rose just like don't really think anything of it. But this line of questioning and this sort of secret group is going to come back to bite them in the ass later on. Now, let me just say right here that I feel like this book shows a major evolution in like the world building, and I feel like this book is definitely my favorite so far because I feel like all these threads that have been woven are sort of coming together, and we're getting this bigger picture. We have this darker tone after the ending of the last book that carries through to this book, and I just really enjoy it. Like, I feel like this book is what the Vampire Academy series should have been from the start and should continue to be. Now, as part of Rose's punishment for, you know, not protecting Christian, she has to do community service on her days off. So she is in the chapel and she's like moving boxes for the priest or the pastor or whatever, and Dimitri is there too, and they end up going to the elementary campus where the younger Morroys are. And while she's there, she runs into this Morroy girl named Jill, who is just like a big fan of Rose. She's like totally fangirling over her, talking, you know, a million miles a minute. And she eventually reveals that she wants to learn how to fight and wants Rose to teach her, because she's been seeing some of her classmates coming into class with all these like bruises on them, yet they seem really happy about the fight. So she thinks that there's some bully going around beating kids up, and she wants to learn to protect herself. Now, despite them previously being barred from participating in Victor Dashkov's trial, suddenly Rose, Christian, and Lissa are being called to participate and testify. So they get on a plane, they're going to the royal court, and while they're up in the air, Rose starts seeing all these like black spots, and she has this like horrible headache and migraine that she can't get rid of, and she's just very like snappy and angry and is just sort of like barking at everybody. Now, Lissa tries to like help and heal her, but not even Lissa's healing magic can help her, and that kind of takes Lissa aback because this should be something that she can do, and yet it's not working. As soon as they touch down in the royal court, Lissa is called to see the queen privately. And Lissa basically tells Rose, like, please, like, do that thing where you go into my head to see what's happening. So Rose does, and we see that Lissa is being questioned about her spirit magic. Adrian is in the room too, and it seems that Tatiana, the queen, is aware that both Adrian and Lissa have these powers of spirit. Lissa basically talks about how she doesn't like to use her powers, especially to like heal people or bring people back from the dead, because she believes that will only benefit the more privileged Morroy, aka the royals. Lissa also criticizes the ways in which Dhampir guardians are divided amongst the Morroys. Once again, it is the royals who get all the Dhampirs and all the protection, whereas non-royal Morroys are just sort of left to defend themselves. She even very controversially speaks out in support of Natasha Ozera's push to learn offensive magic and use their powers to fight alongside Dhampirs. And Tatiana seems annoyed, perplexed, I guess you could say, but she listens and sort of takes in what Lissa has to say. After this meeting, Rose, Eddie, and Christian meet up with Mia Rinaldi. Lissa then shows up to this little meeting / lunch, and she's kind of tipsy because Adrian had took her to the bar, which, now that I'm saying it out loud, a 21-year-old guy getting an underage 17-year-old girl kind of tipsy. Like, even if he's not interested in her, it's still weird. It's, I love you, Adrian, but weirdo behavior. Now, Christian sees Lissa all, like, giggly and kind of, you know, buzzed, and he gets really upset because Rose basically can infer that Christian is jealous. Not because he thinks that Adrian really likes Lissa. I mean, a part of him does. But what really annoys him is that Adrian is very well connected. He is the great nephew of the queen, and he can do things for Lissa and get her connections that Christian never could because he is, you know, isolated and ostracized from the rest of the Morroy. Lissa and Christian start arguing in front of everybody, and Rose finally jumps in and tells them to cool it. But it seems like the second that those two calm down, Rose suddenly becomes like irrationally angry. So she steps outside, where she runs into Adrian, who went outside to smoke. Before Mia leaves the group behind to go about her day, she has a note that a clerk gave her to pass on to Rose, and when Rose reads the note, it is from Victor Dashkov asking how she is and saying that he wants to meet her. Rose goes to Dimitri immediately, and they both go to the cell where Victor is being held to see what the hell he wants. And it seems like Victor is really just there to taunt him with the knowledge that he has. He basically knows everything that is going on outside of the cell doors. He has informants and people still on his side working for him in secret. And he also tells Rose that she's, you know, a huge hypocrite for supporting Natasha Ozera and her sort of like rebellion and revolution, whereas, you know, he was fighting for the same things, you know, a total overhaul of the Moroi government and, you know, system, but he's the one in prison. Victor also comments on Alyssa's future, saying that she's going to play a really big role in the future of the Moroi with her natural charisma, her abilities for compulsion, her spirit healing abilities, you know, being the last Dragomir, like she's going to be really important. And he seems to think that she's sort of like the key to his future. No longer just to like heal him and keep her as like a kind of pet, but to like really have her be like partners with him or something. During the trial, Dimitri and Rose both testify and they lie about what happened that night when Victor put that charm necklace on Rose and they ended up almost sleeping together. I'm sorry, everything was going so well. Like, I was actually having a good time, like, recapping this series. And then we get to Rose and Dimitri shit and I just, like, immediately shut down and get annoyed. Okay, let's get this over with. So Victor is put on the stand, and during his testimony, he makes a comment about them having to prepare a statutory rape case against Dimitri in the near future, and everyone acts all shocked, and like, I'm sorry, I know he's like meant to be the villain, but he made several points. Like, this man has a point, and in fact, I agree with him. Like, I don't know, like, I feel like this was meant to be a, you know, how could he stoop so low, and that's not what this is at all, and like, yes it is. Yes it is. I'm so sick of talking about Rose and Dimitri and how weird it is. But I feel like every single time this book tries to make the argument that they're meant to be and that what's going on between them is romantic, I have to, like, rebuke that. Because it's not. It's absolutely not. Anyway, Victor is found guilty and immediately sent to prison. And then Tatiana calls Lissa in again to talk, and she actually offers Lissa a position at court. She says, come live here after you've graduated, and you can go to a nearby private university. And it's like this really big deal. And Lissa is a little bit shocked, but also pleasantly surprised. She really cares about education. So she sort of agrees as long as Rose can come with her. And she actually tries to sort of like finagle her way into like a bigger college, like a better college. And the queen kind of like, okay, I'll think about it. So I honestly, like, you guys, I love Lissa so much. I love Lissa. Oh man, that's my girl. I don't know what you want me to say. That's my girl. And then, in a surprising turn of events, the queen also calls Rose in for a chat. And it's not nearly as nice as the chat between her and Lissa. She accuses Rose of trying to seduce Adrian. She basically tells her to back the hell off. She slut-shames her because what is new? It is not a Vampire Academy book without someone, just one person at least, slut-shaming Rose. So she does that, and Rose is like, listen lady, everything about me and Adrian is totally one-sided. We're not together. I don't like him like that. I cannot stop doing something that I'm not actually doing. And it's revealed throughout this conversation that Tatiana wants Lissa and Adrian to be together because she believes that they could be like this power couple. She wants to keep Lissa sort of like under her power, and by marrying her great nephew, she'll be able to do that. So Rose is like, what the hell? That's never gonna happen. She loves Christian. And the queen's like, Christian and Lissa can never be together. Like, ooh, you guys. Like, Christian and Lissa just, like, give you every trope that you wanted. There's, like, a splash of enemies to lovers in the first book. There's star-crossed lovers, you know, grumpy sunshine dynamic. You guys. Like, Christian and Lissa are where it's at. I don't know what else to tell you. So after this very stressful encounter, Lissa takes Rose to go get their nails done. And while Rose is there, she is getting a foot massage from a Dhampir man named Ambrose, and she sees bite marks on his neck. And it's revealed that he is like a lover to the queen. Rose is very taken aback by this. And Ambrose basically says that he never wanted to be a guardian, that he, you know, enjoys this way of life, and that she should consider that there are other things she can do with her life besides, you know, living it entirely for someone else. The whole group gets back on the plane to return to the academy, and when they're up in the air, all of the, like, black spots and the migraines come back in full force, and it's excruciating pain, and suddenly Rose is in this, like, dark place surrounded by dead people. Mason is there, Lissa's family members are there. She sees, you know, a bunch of Moroi that she's seen, like, slaughtered during different Strigoi attacks. And she's just, she starts screaming, she can't see anything, and she blacks out, and finally comes to in the infirmary at school. When she wakes up, she finally tells the truth to Dimitri, the head nurse, and, like, the dean of all the Dhampirs on campus. Her name starts with an A. I don't know, I'm just gonna call her A. So she tells all of them the truth that she has been seeing, like, ghosts, and particularly Mason, and they all believe that this is a result of PTSD from the attack and seeing Mason die. And they discuss potentially, you know, taking her out of the field experience, and she overhears and begs them not to. So they finally decide that she's just going to go part-time and also see a counselor. Then we move on to a scene in which Lissa and Adrian are practicing healing powers, and Lissa is trying to teach Adrian how to heal with a plant, and Adrian is really struggling. At one point when Lissa is using her magic, Rose notices this sort of, like, darkness come into her that she used to feel a lot when she used her powers in the beginning, when she was a little bit out of control, when it was, you know, really hurting her mental health. And Rose gets really scared, but then suddenly that darkness fades away and Lissa returns back to normal. Now later on, when Rose is talking to Adrian, he tells her that he noticed when this happened that there was, like, a bit of darkness in Lissa's aura. Remember, he can see those around people because of his spirit abilities. And he saw that darkness suddenly become absorbed by Rose's aura. So he basically thinks that because Rose is, like, basically collecting all of Lissa's, like, darkness and, you know, like, bad feelings, that Lissa isn't feeling any of that, but that Rose, you know, that's why she's so angry all the time. Maybe that's why she's seeing ghosts. Now, these suspicions are all but confirmed when Rose immediately goes to the chapel to talk to the priest there, and she asks about Anna and Saint Vladimir, whom, similarly to Lissa and Rose, you know, Saint Vladimir brought her back to life, she was shadow-kissed, etc. And the priest tells her that Anna struggled a lot in her last years of life mentally, and that after Saint Vladimir died, she ended up unaliving herself not too long afterwards. And Rose suddenly realizes that this could be the way that she and Lissa go. However, she decides not to tell Lissa about this transference of darkness because she knows that that would lead to Lissa not using her powers, and she knows how much magic means to Lissa. So not too long afterwards, Rose is just, like, walking around, I believe, and she sees a young Moroi girl around her age who has all of these bruises on her. So she goes up to her and basically pretends like she knows where she got the bruises from, and the girl ends up, like, inadvertently spilling about it and says that, like, oh, you know, like, the initiation, I couldn't hack it, and, you know, we're not supposed to talk about this, and we could get in a lot of trouble. She actually talks to Adrian about this and mentions the name of the society that the girl mentioned to her, called Mana. And Adrian says that there are lots of chapters of this society all over, like, the vampiric academies, and every single one that pops up, they do it for, like, a particular reason, but they're all just, like, elitist and weird, and, you know, he's not a fan of them. That same day, Rose and Christian are waiting in line for the feeders, and Jesse and Ralph use compulsion against, you know, rules and general vampiric laws to get to the front of the line, and Rose and Christian confront them about this, but they just sort of brush them off and say that they're just, you know, doing what they need to get what they want, and yeah, they're gross. Jesse and Ralph fucking suck. I'm, like, so tired of them. Christian then gets called up, and they sit with Alice, who is, you know, his regular feeder. And whilst talking, Rose sort of, you know, mentions that she sees ghosts, and Alice sort of, you know, takes her very seriously and says that it could be because the wards around the school are failing, and thus the undead, these ghosts, are finding their way inside. And Rose actually starts to think seriously about this, because when she's in the school, sometimes she'll see Mason, but when she was in the sky, no longer, you know, with protective wards around her, everything, like, all those ghosts, all those headaches came at her in full force. And then when she was at court, which is even, you know, more heavily warded than the school, she didn't see anything or anyone. So she starts to think that maybe Alice is onto something here. Lissa is eventually approached by Jesse and Ralph about joining Mana, and they seem to really, really want her in their group because, you know, they have a sense of her, you know, charisma and the fact that she can use compulsion, you know, very easily. But she obviously turns them down and doesn't want anything to do with Mana. Not too long after this, Christian and Adrian get into a very public fight and argument over, you know, Lissa and Christian saying that, you know, Adrian is only around to try to get to Lissa and stuff. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What matters is that eventually Rose breaks up the fight, and then they realize that Lissa isn't even around. So Rose sort of goes into her mind and sees that she is currently being like hit with rocks. She's being suffocated with water magic, and she's like, what the hell? And they all charge over, and they see that Lissa is being physically tortured by Jesse, Ralph, and other members of Mana. And they keep telling Lissa every single time that she tells them to stop, you know, you can make us, just use your compulsion. And I guess this is like the initiation ceremony into the society. They want to learn compulsion so that they can like dictate, you know, the powers that be in Moroi society. And in order to be part of the group, you have to like compel them to stop hurting you. That's why everyone had all these like bruises. Lissa eventually snaps, and she uses this darker power that Spirit has, where she makes Jesse see horrible things and believe that they are reality. So he is like screaming, writhing, like freaking out, and Rose gets really scared, and she keeps telling Lissa, you know, stop, stop, and she finally like takes on some of her darkness, and Lissa finally stops. However, in taking on Lissa's darkness, Rose is now the one who is out of control and angry. She starts beating Jesse, will not stop, refuses to stop. Dimitri even like pulls her off of him, and she still is trying to fight him to get back to Jesse. He takes her off to clean her up. Oh god. Oh god, this is where it starts. Whew, okay. Oh, okay, I gotta psych myself up. They end up admitting their love and sleeping together. I can't. And like, in Rose's mind, and I guess in the reader's mind, we're supposed to think that this is romantic, but it's not. It's so not okay. Like, I am so not okay with this. I literally wrote in my notes, I hate my life, I want to die, bro, fuck off. And valid. I still feel that way. During the night, Mason makes another reappearance, and he is just like absolutely freaking out, incredibly anxious. He keeps pointing to the same place on campus, and Rose finally asks him, like, okay, like, what's going on? And he manages to tell her they're coming. And then suddenly a Strigoi attacks them, and Dimitri manages to fend him off, and Rose could actually like physically feel the Strigoi coming, and she knows that there's more of them. She gets this like really nauseous feeling, and Dimitri tells her like, don't worry about me, go tell everyone else that the wards have been breached. And the whole campus goes on lockdown. And Rose like goes out there to try to fight some Strigoi, and she manages to run into Christian, who doesn't really know what's going on. And when he does find out, two Strigoi attack them. And Rose manages to kill one of them, but then the other one gets on top of her, and then suddenly the Strigoi bursts into flames. And Rose manages to get on top of him and stake him and kill him. Rose and Christian decide to like team up. So basically Christian is going to light these dudes on fire, and then Rose can easily go in for the kill. So they do that, and they get rid of a bunch of Strigoi, and they decide to go to the elementary campus that doesn't have as many Dompiers and is closer to the breach. They eventually run into Dimitri, and he lets them know that there are a few dead Dompiers, but more importantly than that, there are Moroi and Dompiers who were taken captive. About 13 people, I believe. And amongst them is Eddie. And Rose is just absolutely shocked and is just gung-ho. We have to go get them. We have to go save them. Rose tells Dimitri about her ability to feel Strigoi coming and thinks that this is all sort of connected to her being shadow-kissed. Essentially that when she took the life of those Strigoi at the end of the last book, it made her connection to the dying world even stronger. That's why she can see the ghosts. That's why she can feel when the Strigoi are coming, because they're undead. So she is like, you have to take me to go save these people because I know when they're coming. A meeting is called with all of the Guardians, and Janine Hathaway, Rose's mom, even shows up. And they're all talking and trying to decide whether or not they're going to go back for the captives, and everyone is pretty much on board. And then Rose's mom proposes, based on Rose's advice and what Rose told her, that they should bring along some novices, many of whom are going to graduate in a few months. Her mom then proposes that they also bring along some fire-using Moroi. And they all go together to these caves nearby campus where the Strigoi are hiding until, you know, the day ends and they can, like, move in the nighttime. Before everyone leaves, Rose and Dimitri have a conversation where they decide that they want to be together. Bully for them. I hate it. I don't care. It doesn't last. Spoiler alert. Am I happy about that? Yes. Yes, I am. They head to the caves, and Rose and the other novices are hanging back, and they hear that while all of the captives have gotten free, a lot of the Dhampirs are stuck in there and blocked because of like this avalanche, and they can't get out. So Rose goes in there with another Dhampir, and, you know, they're all fighting. Her mom's there, Dimitri's there, and they manage to, you know, kill the Strigoi, break free. They're all headed towards the exit. Rose gets out first, and then suddenly she's looking, and she sees Dimitri running towards the exit, and he is ambushed by Strigoi, and he ends up getting bitten in the neck, and then suddenly all these Strigoi are on him, and Rose tries to run back in, but her mom holds her back, and Rose just keeps screaming that she has to get back to him, but her mom is like, no, he's as good as dead, he is dead, we need to leave, because, you know, daylight is fading as we speak, we have to go. So she ends up just tearing off and goes back to campus, and it's just, you know, the aftermath is terrible. Everyone is hurt, everyone is grieving, no one knows what to do. There's a decision made that at daybreak they are going to go back to the caves and collect their dead. So Rose is just pacing, she's going in and out of sleep, trying to wait and go back and hopefully find Dimitri. In the meantime, she goes and speaks to Lissa, who has actually been healing people with her spirit abilities, and Adrian has as well. So this basically means that now everybody knows about their spirit powers. Lissa and Rose are talking, and Rose basically says, you have to come with us to the caves. If Dimitri is there, you can heal him, and even if he's dead, you have to bring him back to life. Like, please do this for me. And Lissa keeps saying, you're like, no, I can't do that. It's not my place, you know, to play God like that and decide who gets to come back and who doesn't. And while Rose is like desperately trying to like beg her to do this, Lissa suddenly realizes that Rose was in love with Dimitri. When all the novices and guardians return to the caves to collect the bodies, they realized that one Moroi girl, who was pretty much drained of blood, and Dimitri are both missing. And there is an understanding between Rose and her mother that Dimitri was likely taken and turned Strigoi. Which I have to admit, even though I don't like Dimitri, it's a little bit of an iconic move. A little bit of an iconic move in the middle of the series to take the main love interest, one of the main characters, and turn him into like an evil Strigoi. Like, it's a good move. It's a good move. A few weeks pass, and it's Rose's 18th birthday, and on that very day, she goes to the administration, the school, and she resigns. She says, I don't want to graduate, I'm out of here, bye, and you can't, you know, say anything because I'm 18 now, I'm an adult. And while Rose is on her way off the campus, she runs into Lissa, who begs her not to go, you know, please stay with me, you can't leave me, you and me are a team, you're shadow kissed, we have to be together, don't do this. And Lissa has figured out Rose's plan, which is that she is going to hunt down Dimitri and kill him because, you know, in the first book, they had a conversation wherein Rose and Dimitri both said that they would rather die than be Strigoi. So Rose wants to honor his wish and kill him. And Lissa basically sees this as Rose choosing Dimitri over her. And Rose says to Lissa that this is what I have to do for me. For once in my life, I need to make the choice and not put you ahead of my own decisions. And this is something that I need to do. And the book ends with this pretty iconic line where she says something like, I'm on the way to like hunt and kill the love of my life, which like I said, I don't like Rose and Dimitri, but it got me. Like, even now, even though I know what happens in the fourth book a little bit from what I can remember, like, I'm still excited, but also not excited because, as I mentioned before, book 4 is where I stopped with the series because I couldn't handle it. I remember vaguely what happens in the fourth book, but I think that I trauma blocked a lot of it because I just like couldn't do it. So, yeah, let me go ahead and like re-traumatize myself and open up some old wounds and old scars. 6 years ago in 2016, when I first attempted to read this series, Blood Promise was my breaking point. I simply gave up. Like, my mind, my body, my spirit gave out. It simply could not continue. So I was worried going back into this book because I had such like bad memories attached to it. And it was at once not as bad as I remember it being, and also so much worse. See, this is the first book in the series that kind of deviates from the St. Vladimir's Academy setting. In all the previous books, that was where like the brunt of the action was happening. But here we have Rose basically going off on this quest to find and kill Dimitri now that he is a Strigoi. And it allows for the expansion of the world, which I always love. I do think that the vampiric world that Rochelle Mead created is incredibly interesting. The powers, the different dynamics between the Moroi, the Dhampirs, the Strigoi. I think it's very interesting and well done. Like I said throughout this video, I think that the series shines when it focuses on the action, the politics of this world. Unfortunately, this book, while it has a lot of that, expansion of the world and that action, the stuff that I like, it also heavily features the one thing about this series that I dislike the most, which is Dimitri and his relationship with Rose. The book opens up with Rose in Siberia, and she is trying to find this Dhampir commune that Dimitri grew up in, trying to see if maybe there's some trace of him there. She can try to get some information. So she's kind of like going to all these like Moroi nightclubs, but is not really finding anyone who will tell her where a Dhampir community is, and she's just having no luck. And she also is being followed by something or someone, and one night while she's walking down this alleyway, she finally confronts the person that is following her, and it turns out to be my best girl, my number one. The reason I started this entire Vampire Academy series all the way in 2016, Sydney Sage. For those of you who don't know, this character, Sydney, who we're introduced to in this book, later becomes the main character of the spin-off series, Bloodlines. And that was actually the series that I really wanted to read back in 2016. The only reason I even tried to read Vampire Academy was so that I could have some kind of context when I started reading Bloodlines. And the gag is that I didn't even finish either of those series. So Sydney identifies herself as an alchemist, and that is basically a large group of people who protect the human world from the vampire world. They act as this kind of go-between. And during the medieval period, when alchemists first sort of came into being, they struck a deal with the vampires in which the vampires would give them this like golden flower tattoo, and it's infused with Moroi blood and like water and earth elements, I believe. So it gives them like immortal life, not immortal life, but like longer life, and they're more resistant to disease and injury. And in exchange, this flower makes it physically impossible for them to reveal the secret of the Moroi and vampire world to humans. Now, Rose never found out about the alchemists because you only find out about them when you graduate, and obviously she didn't graduate. So she's kind of shocked by this. And Sydney also, like most alchemists, like all alchemists really, believes that all vampires are evil and abominations. It doesn't matter if they're Strigoi or Dhampir or Moroi, all of them are equally bad. And this kind of pisses Rose off a little bit because in her world, in her mind, there's a distinct difference between those three categories of vampire. Rose decides to use Sydney and her information and connections and asks her if she knows of any Dhampir communes. And Sydney ends up getting on the phone with one of her bosses or superiors. She's currently doing like what's called an alchemist internship. She gets on the phone with them and they tell her, you have to escort Rose to one of these communes. And the commune that she has to go to, where Dimitri is from, is called Baya. The two of them suddenly get attacked by Strigoi, and Rose manages to incapacitate one, but then another one gets the better of her. But then suddenly the ghosts that she always sees, like they show up, and I guess the Strigoi can also see them because they get so freaked out that they run away. However, their appearance also impacts Rose, and she blacks out and kind of remembers like being in a car and being taken somewhere, and she wakes up surrounded by Dimitri's family, which is made up of his mother, his grandmother, and like a whole bunch of sisters. Rose becomes extremely close with his family, especially his sister Victoria, and she eventually reveals the truth that Dimitri became Strigoi. And his family has a memorial for him, and they basically act as if he's like fully dead. Now, throughout the book, Rose will repeatedly go into Lissa's mind just to sort of find some comfort in her best friend and see what she's up to. And during one of those times, she sees that Lissa is just getting really fed up with Queen Tatiana because she is constantly throwing Adrian and Lissa together to, meet dignitaries and to, take people on tours around the school. Also, Queen Tatiana has replaced the non-royal Moroi headmistress, Korova, of the academy with a royal Moroi whose last name is Lazar. And his two kids have also come to live at St. Vladimir's, a younger son who is very, keeps to himself, really just like angry and isolated, and his older daughter, Avery, who is very bubbly and fun. Avery ends up meeting the whole crew at St. Vladimir's, so Christian, Adrian, and Jill, who has sort of become like part of their crew a bit. She's like a freshman at St. Vladimir's, and she has a bit of a crush on Adrian and also sees Christian as a bit of like a brother figure and wants to learn like offensive magic, so she's kind of like the baby of the group. Back in Baya, Rose finds out from Sydney that the person that brought her to that town, that village, was a man named Abe Mazur, and he is a very well-connected Moroi man. He is so well-connected and so rich that he even hired his own guardians, and he basically says to Rose, you need to leave Russia, you shouldn't be here, you know, I have been hired by someone to watch over you. He doesn't reveal who, but he says they want you out here and to go back to school. And she basically tells him to, you know, F off, I'm staying here, I've got things to do, and, you know, you can't boss me around. Rose is then taken by Dimitri's grandma to go see a bonded couple in the commune, Mark and Oksana. They're very similar to Rose and Lissa in that Oksana is a spirit user and Mark is bonded to her psychically. And Rose finds out from Mark that apparently the darkness that the shadow-kissed person consumes from the spirit user whenever they use their magic, that can actually be healed away. So it's possible for Lissa to like heal Rose's dark aura, but it takes a lot of practice and a lot of trust, communication, and, you know, give and take between the shadow-kissed and the spirit user. Adrian also enters Rose's dream, and they kind of exchange information about what's going on. Rose tells him about the spirit couple, the bonded couple that she met, and she also tells him about this ring that was given to her by the couple that's infused with spirit and can actually help calm down her darker aura. And Adrian sort of talks about Avery and sort of makes some comments about her as if like she's kind of replacing Rose, and that makes Rose a little bit upset. While Rose is staying in Baya, she also meets a group of like what are called unpromised vigilante dompiers. So they are not like assigned to any kind of Moroi to protect them. They just go out and hunt Strigoi of their own volition. And they're kind of looked down upon because they're more like thrill seekers. And they actually invite Rose to be part of their group, but she declines and actually decides to, you know, stay with Dimitri's family and feels really close to them, particularly his sister Victoria. And she even goes out with Victoria one night when she finds out that Victoria has a Moroi boyfriend named Roland. And Roland basically is not really interested in Victoria beyond, like, seducing her and sleeping with her. Rose figures out that he actually is the father of another one of Dimitri's sister's baby. So he has like one sister named Sonia who's currently pregnant, and Roland is the father of that baby but doesn't give a fuck, and now he's like moved on to Victoria. Rose has gone out with Victoria and Roland is like obviously hitting on her and being really creepy, and she also runs into Abe Mazur, and Abe once again reminds her like, you need to leave, and I'll tell you what, if you leave Baya right now, I will make sure that Roland doesn't bother Victoria. He won't mess with her anymore. If I tell him not to, he won't, because everyone's scared of him. And Rose agrees, and Victoria gets really mad at her. She says, you know, I hate you, you're not my sister, you don't belong here. And Rose sort of realizes that she's right. And she also has a conversation with Dimitri's grandma. Dimitri's granny tells her, you know, I dreamed that you would come here, and I also dreamed that it's your mission to kill Dimitri, and you should go and do that. So, you know, Rose listens to her, she goes to the Vigilante Unpromised group and says, hey, I'll join you, which is what she does. When they're out hunting Strigoi, Rose will interrogate every single one that they capture, ask them if they know of Dimitri, and if they don't, she'll just let the others kill them. And eventually she happens upon a Strigoi that does know Dimitri, and so she tells him, I'm gonna let you go, and you're going to tell Dimitri that Rose Hathaway is looking for him. Rose once again enters Lissa's mind, and she sees Lissa at royal court after Avery invited them, and she's attending all these parties and just really not having a good time. She doesn't feel like she fits in with these people, and she's also displaying like increasingly reckless and dangerous behavior. She's drinking a lot at all these parties, and one time she's even dancing on this table and ends up falling into her ex-boyfriend Aaron's arms. And for some reason, she just like ends up kissing him. Like, they kind of treat it as if it's like a funny goodbye kiss. And Jill sees this, and since Jill really likes Christian and sees him as like a mentor and older brother, she's like, what the hell, you just cheated on him, you have to do something about this. And Lissa gets irrationally angry and like lashes out at Jill. We'll get back to that, just know obviously something's going on there, and you know, we'll get to that later. Rose is out hunting Strigoi again when she finally runs into Dimitri, or more like Dimitri shows up. He says her name, she is like so overcome that she hesitates and doesn't stake him or do anything, and he ends up knocking her out. And when Rose awakens, she is in this very opulent hotel suite, and Dimitri is there, and he basically tells her that he wants her to turn Strigoi and be with him. Dimitri ends up kissing her, and Rose sort of gives in to the kiss, and he eventually ends up biting her. And a Strigoi bite is like 10 times more like addictive than a Moroi bite. So Rose just completely loses like all her senses. Like, she doesn't care about anything but the next bite. She basically becomes a like willing blood whore, I hate saying that, to Dimitri. And so she just like wears all these pretty dresses that he buys her and all these jewels, and she just like sits in the room all day waiting for him to come and kiss her and then bite her. That's literally all she cares about. She forgets about killing him, about trying to go home, anything. The only thing that like kind of snaps her out of the daze that she's constantly in is when Dimitri mentions that he has been told by this woman, Galina, who like owns this hotel and also like has like a whole like community of Strigoi that she looks after and that, you know, live under her like reign. He says that Galina gave him like an ultimatum. She says, you either kill Rose or you turn Rose into Strigoi. So Dimitri is constantly, every single time that he goes to see Rose, bringing up like, hey, let me turn you. And Rose just keeps sort of like avoiding the question or giving an answer. Rose ends up going back into Lissa's mind, and she sees Christian confront her about the kiss. And he's just like really upset, especially because it was Jill who told him about it and not Lissa. And suddenly Rose is like almost like physically pushed out of Lissa's mind, and she has no idea how that even happened. It's never happened to her before, and she's just like really shocked and has no idea how Lissa even did that. Even though it doesn't feel like Lissa even did it. It felt like someone basically came and like literally just like shoved her out of Lissa's mind. Rose eventually manages to like come back to herself and, you know, snap out of this like high and daze that she's constantly been in, and she manages to find this like wobbly chair in the suite, and she breaks off the leg, and so she has this wooden stake, which isn't going to kill Dimitri or any Strigoi, but it will incapacitate them. So when Dimitri comes into the room and they start kissing, she sort of uses the moment to stake him. Okay, before we go any further with like what happens in the story, because I feel like I'm going so rapid fire with this book that I need to like hit time out, pause for a second, because this entire storyline with like Rose and her being like addicted to Dimitri's bite is so like, it's fucked up, isn't it? It's pretty fucked up. Looking back on this series and some of the stuff that happens, I firmly believe that this should have been a new adult series. Like, absolutely 100%. So Dimitri is basically like down for the count, at least for the next like 5 minutes. So Rose manages to get out of the room, and she finds this servant and gets him to take her to where, you know, all the weapons are. And she finds a silver stake, not hers, but a silver stake, and tries to get out of there. While she's trying to find her way out, she runs into Galina, and they end up going at it. And Rose is about to completely lose to this woman, and suddenly Dimitri shows up and starts going at it with her. And Dimitri is losing, and Rose basically, instead of running away, turns around, stakes Galina, and kills her. At the same time, all the other Strigoi who work for Galina come into the room, and it's like 4 against 1 with Dimitri, and Rose is like, I have to get out of here. Rose ends up on the run. She's trying to get away to, you know, the next nearest city, and of course Dimitri is, you know, in hot pursuit. He manages to beat all the other Strigoi and is trying to find her. And they keep saying, you know, let me turn you, come be with me, we belong together. And Rose eventually decides that she would rather die than become a Strigoi. So they end up having like this confrontation on a bridge, and she jumps off it. And he manages to grab her arm. And she kind of knew that he would do this. So in her other arm, she has the silver stake and like kind of like pulls herself back up and stabs him in the chest, and he ends up falling into the water. And it's done. She killed him. Let's round of applause for that. I really wish I could tell you that this was like the end of the series, that Rose like, you know, grits her teeth, patches herself up, and goes home and tries to put her life back together. And, you know, 5-10 years from now, she looks back on this relationship and realizes how incredibly inappropriate it was, and she moves on. I really wish I could tell you that that's what happens. But I think we both know that that's not how this is gonna go, because there's more left to this book, and there's 2 books after this. So, you know, life is just a series of disappointments. Rose ends up calling Sydney, and she, Mark and Oksana, the bonded couple from before, and Abe Mazur show up, and Oksana ends up healing Rose, and Rose basically is like obviously still grieving and reeling from what happened, but she also goes into Lissa's mind and sees that Lissa is like at this party, drunk as hell, and standing on the edge of an open window. And she is like freaking out. She's like, I have to get to Lissa. She's in danger. Something's going on with her. I need to go right now. And it's in this moment that Rose realizes that Avery is a spirit user and has been compelling Lissa to do all this really dangerous shit. And she is the one who has been pushing Rose out of Lissa's head. And she does it again, right in this moment. And Rose realizes that she could use like Oksana's help, because Oksana has the ability as a spirit user to actually like enter anyone's mind. Like, it's not just her bonded like mate or person that she can slip into their mind. Like, she can do it with anybody. So Rose says, like, please, like, I'm gonna enter Lissa's mind, and while I'm doing that, you enter my mind and see if you can like fight Avery off and get Lissa to like no longer be compelled. So they do this, and they manage to push Avery out of Lissa's mind and get Lissa to fight back against the compulsion. So Lissa kind of like comes to, but she's still really drunk and thus can't really like access her spirit powers. Now there's this like big standoff between Avery, her brother Reed, and her brother's guardian, Simon. And it's like those three against Rose, Lissa, Oksana, and then Adrian, who joins the fight. So Lissa, Adrian, and Oksana team up and they take down Avery, Reed, and Simon. And the three of them go into this like catatonic state. Later on, we find out that Avery is indeed a spirit user and that she was bonded to both Reed and Simon. Apparently Simon died in a battle and she brought him back to life, but Reed, she might have actually like killed him herself and then brought him back simply so that she could have like more bonded like pairs. And she planned on doing the same thing to Lissa. Having like two people that you're bonded to can like really weaken your mind, and that's why all three of them, you know, when they went up against Adrian, Lissa, and Oksana, just like completely just like lost their minds basically. Back in Siberia, Rose and Oksana like come back to themselves, and I'm not sure exactly how this happened, but Mark, Oksana, Abe, and Rose get on the topic of like spirit, and Rose mentions that back when she was with Dimitri, he held that spirit-infused ring that the couple gave her. And when he held that ring, he seemed to almost like become his old self. And this is when Mark and Oksana tell Rose about a man that they once knew named Robert, who spoke about how he brought a Strigoi back through the use of spirit. But they sort of dismiss it as like an old wives' tale and total bullshit. And Rose eventually believes the same thing. She says, even if it was a possibility, Dimitri is dead. And I need to go back and be with Lissa. That is where I belong. Lissa is now the person that I choose because she's living. So Rose returns to St. Vladimir's, and one of my favorite scenes in the entire book, and honestly the entire series, then occurs, in which Rose and Lissa reunite and they sit down and have a really great long conversation about, you know, how they haven't really been good friends to each other and they want to be better. Lissa apologizes for being so selfish and for making Rose feel like she had to choose between her and Dimitri. However, Rose lives her life, whether she becomes Lissa's guardian or not. That has to be completely up to her. And Rose sort of realizes that she's been, you know, resentful towards Lissa because she hasn't told Lissa the truth about everything that she's been feeling. So that is what she does. She tells Lissa the whole truth about what happened, you know, going to Siberia, Dimitri's family, basically, you know, having Dimitri feed off of her and everything that happened. And it's a really great moment between the two of them, a really like vulnerable moment. And Rose actually decides to return to school and graduate in 2 months, and she still wants to become Lissa's guardian more than anything. She actually meets up with her mom, and there's a really great moment between the two of them where they reunite and are both like crying and happy to see each other. And it's during this conversation that we find out that Abe Mazur is actually Ibrahim, and he is Rose's father. All the time where he was telling her, you need to leave Russia, you know, there's someone who wants you to go home, it was basically him the whole time. He just like wanted Rose to get away from danger. So, ta-da! I don't really know how to react to that. It's actually like really funny the way it's so casually mentioned. Janine is just like, oh yeah, like he's your father. She's just like, I don't know, she just like rolls with it. It's very strange. Rose also decides to give a relationship with Adrian a try, and again, like, I love Adrian, I do, but if I'm gonna complain about Dimitri, then I also need to come down on my boy as well, because why was he, you know, openly flirting with a 17-year-old? Just because she's now 18 doesn't mean shit. Doesn't mean shit, and I don't like it. Like, oh my god, there's another thing I didn't mention. Okay, throughout the book, I think, was it Avery? Like, the characters, I think it was Avery, kept referring to Jill, you know, the young 14, 15-year-old girl who was like newly part of their group. She kept referring to her as Jailbait. Like, her nickname was Jailbait. What? What? This is the thing with this book series. Like, it keeps acknowledging the age gaps and how, like, objectively strange they are, but then playing it off like it doesn't matter. Like, why are you fucking gaslighting me? You can't do that to me, okay? I'm not, 18, 19 years old like back in 2016, You can't pull, like, the wool over my eyes, bitch. This shit is weird. It's fucking weird. Anyway, this book ends with Rose receiving an envelope that has a silver stake in it. And yes, it is the silver stake that was used to kill Dimitri. And there's a note from Dimitri saying, hey, I'm coming to get you. And this time, I don't want to turn you into Strigoi. I'm gonna kill you. And Rose is shocked by this. And then she decides that she needs to find this Robert guy, whom, by the way, is Victor Dashkov's illegitimate brother. So in her mind, she's like, okay, before Dimitri, gets to me and tries to kill me, if there is some way for me to turn him, back into his former self, then I need to try. So I need to find this Robert guy. And if I want to find this Robert guy, I'm pretty sure that Victor is probably the only person who knows him. So she's like, okay, I gotta bust this motherfucker out of jail. And that's where we end the book. I'm a big fan of this kind of like full circle moment, like the villain of the first book being like the key to, the solution to save Dimitri. Even though I don't like Dimitri, I can appreciate, the world building and the plot. So I really sped through this summary because, like I said, I didn't want to talk about this book. It was way too focused on Dimitri and Rose, and I hated it. I needed to get through it as quick as possible. So, sorry, you may have to, turn this part of the video down to, 0.75 speed to understand what I'm saying. And for that, I do apologize. Literally the only thing that keeps me going with this series are the action sequences, the world building, and the Lissa-Rose friendship. And also Lissa and Christian, whom, by the way, are currently broken up because, Christian still feels betrayed. Yes, he knows that, Avery was controlling Lissa's behavior, but he just is a bit too hurt by what went down to, be back with her immediately, which does hurt me a little bit, but, I just want to get to Bloodlines. That's all that I'm here for. But now I'm worried that I won't even be able to enjoy Bloodlines because Adrian in this series, it's not exempt from the weirdness. Why is he about to be in a relationship with that 18-year-old whom he first started liking when she was 17? Why? I can't wait to watch the show and have them fix all of this. I'm telling you guys, I'm gonna eat Rose and Dimitri up in the show. So as you can see, I'm in a totally different environment for this clip and for the remainder of these clips because I have returned to university, I'm living in a new place, and I'm still getting used to this environment, the sound, the lighting, so if it seems off, just know that that's why. I also had a full packed day of classes, which is why I didn't bother with any of that shit, And I think that, we're comfortable with one another, You know me. I know you. You've been watching this video for God knows how long at this point. I'm sorry about that, by the way. But, we know each other. We're good. I think you can stand to see my bare face. And if not, I don't know what you want me to do about that. The experience of reading this book definitely differed from the other four because I have not previously read this book. So everything that was happening was new to me. I was, really intrigued to see what would happen next. I have to say, once again, I think that Rochelle Mead does a really great job expanding her world, expanding the reaches of, Moroi powers, especially spirit. There's always something new to be discovered and learned. Of course, there were romance subplots, but I personally felt like they didn't steal the spotlight. In other books, I constantly found that the plot was being weighed down by the romance. Then again, that could just be because I don't like the romance. I actively dislike the romance, so that could be part of it. I'm getting way too ahead of myself. Let's back it up and start from the beginning of Spiritbound. So this book does a bit of a time skip of about 2 to 3 months. Rose has been preparing for this final trial. It's basically the last physical test that the Guardian students have to go through in order to officially graduate. And basically they simulate Strigoi attacks, and it's this big thing. Everyone comes out to watch, and Rose has been preparing for that. She's, eager to get it done and graduate and hopefully guard Lissa. And at the same time, she has been receiving weekly letters from Dimitri, basically of him saying that he is going to find her, that he will always be able to find her, and that the second she steps out of the school's boundaries and the magical wards on the school, he will find her and he will kill her. Also, Rose and Adrian have been dating for the last 2 months. Rochelle Mead's constant need to pair Rose with men who are just too old for her is really it's concerning at this point. I'm really just I'm weirded out by it. Rose is headed towards her trial. Her mother and her father are both there to support her, and Rose goes out there. She, kills the trial like we all knew that she would. I mean, she's fought and killed Strigoi in the real world. Of course, this is going to be a piece of cake. And she ends up getting the highest mark in her graduating class. They make these grades public for the graduating class so that Moroi, who are looking for guardians, can sort of look at those numbers and, they want the best of the best, especially the royal Morois. So they use those numbers to sort of gauge who they might want to recruit. Since the end of the last book, Rose has also been trying to use her father's connections to get in touch with Victor in the prison, and she wants to find out more about his brother Robert, who supposedly brought a Strigoi back with the use of spirit, but Victor is refusing to respond to her. So Rose decides that her only option is to break this guy out of prison, and she and Lissa are on the same page about it. Of course, Lissa has her reservations after what Victor did to her, but that is their plan, to break him out of prison. At the same time, there's some drama between Lissa and Christian left over from the last book. They're broken up, and they're constantly trying to make the other person jealous and constantly aware when the other person is talking to another guy or another girl. Honestly, it's a little petty. I really don't understand the point of this Christian Lissa breakup. It's obviously there just to throw in a bit of drama, but by the end of this book, you're gonna see it doesn't fucking matter. They're the one couple in this series that I do like, so it peeves me. Is that how can you say that? It peeves me? Whatever, I said it. I don't like it. Rose ends up going to have dinner with Adrian's parents, and his father is very standoffish and obviously not interested and does not really care to give Rose his approval or even any attention. His mother is a bit better. She's kind to Rose, and Tatiana, the queen, actually shows up at the dinner and is surprisingly civil to Rose as well. And at the end of the dinner, Rose ends up talking to Adrian's mother, and she basically explains that the reason that she's so cool with them dating is because she knows that it's not really going to go anywhere, that they have no future. Because Rose is not going to marry Adrian, because that would require her to give up her life as a Dhampir guardian, and she would never do that. She would always choose her work over anything. So Lissa, Eddie, and Rose end up teaming up to break Victor out of prison, and it's actually kind of an incredible moment. Listen, I really like Eddie a lot. Basically, Rose goes up to him and is like, listen, I'm gonna need your help with something if that's okay. And he's like, yeah, sure. And she's like, well, I didn't even really tell you what it's about. And he's like, I don't give a fuck. I'll do it, whatever. I like Eddie a lot. They managed to successfully break Victor out of prison with the use of, compulsion on Lissa's end, and they run off to Las Vegas. They give Victor a phone. He calls up his half-brother Robert, and he says, okay, come meet us, and he does. He shows up to this restaurant where the whole group is, and starts to explain that he charmed this steak with his spirit powers, and he used it and brought this person back from being a Strigoi. Adrian also shows up in Las Vegas, and he sort of thought that Rose and, Lissa were going on this fun Las Vegas weekend, and then obviously he finds out that that's not what they're doing at all, and he gets really pissed. But he eventually, goes along with their plan and is at that restaurant. And Robert basically tells Rose and Lissa and the whole group that it is mandatory for a spirit user to wield the stake. They have to charm the stake and use it on, the person they're trying to change. And that creates a bit of an issue because Lissa is not a fighter. Lissa is, not really a physically strong person. So the idea that she could potentially stake Dimitri, it's all but impossible. Speaking of the weirdo devil, Dimitri shows up in Las Vegas and has a whole group of cronies who attack Rose and all her friends, and he's there to kill Rose like he said he would. And there's a big fight, and Eddie is about to stake Dimitri, and then Rose kind of gets in the way and stops him from doing that. And eventually they manage to escape, and Eddie confronts Rose about this and is like, what the fuck? You know, I had him, I was going in for the kill, why'd you do that? And Rose basically confesses her love and also lets Eddie in on like why they're doing all of this, why they broke Victor out of prison. She tells him that she believes that she can change Dimitri back. And Eddie thinks that that is ludicrous, and he also points out to Rose that in this, you know, attempt to try to save Dimitri, you know, countless guardians and Moroi have died. Like, people have died just so she can try to like bring this guy back, and is it really worth it? Which I thought was like a really interesting thing to bring up. How many lives is she willing to sacrifice for this one guy when her job is to, you know, protect people and save lives? So I thought that was like an interesting conversation between the two of them. So in the midst of all this hullabaloo, I cannot believe that I actually used that word. Anyway, we're gonna roll with it. In the midst of all this chaos, Victor and Robert manage to run away, and they have no way of tracing them. So Rose, Lissa, Eddie, the whole crew, they all go back to court, and they basically play it off as if they had this like crazy Vegas weekend. And Rose gets in trouble, and she is just kind of like put on cleanup duty. Now Christian is told by Lissa about their plans of bringing Dimitri back, and at first he's a little skeptical, but eventually he gets on board and he decides that he wants to help Lissa in this endeavor. And the two of them talk to the guardians who are watching over them, and they basically like convince them to show them some like fighting moves and also show them how to stake a Strigoi. And Lissa's not great at it, neither is Christian, honestly. And through this process of like learning to fight and stuff, they manage to get a bit closer emotionally and also like physically, because they're like literally fighting each other. Not too long after this little lesson, Christian and Lissa are then attacked by Dimitri and taken captive. And Rose is in Lissa's mind when this happens, and Dimitri basically talks to her, saying that, you know, he's doing this to lure her and that there's no way that she can resist when Lissa is involved. And Rose goes ahead and lets everybody know, and like the whole court goes on lockdown. They're dispatching a bunch of guardians to try to save the last Dragomir princess. And Rose, in her mind, when they're on the way to this place, sort of in her own mind decides that, you know, this is it. You know, I have to choose between Dimitri and Lissa, and I have to choose Lissa because she's living, she, you know, is real, and I can't, you know, just waste her life and give her up just for some, you know, spark of hope of having Dimitri back. So during this battle, during this rescue mission, Rose is actually in a position at one point to kill Dimitri, but before she can deliver the killing blow, she is knocked aside by Lissa. And this whole like ring of fire is created by Christian using his, you know, Moroi powers. He creates this ring of fire around Lissa and Dimitri so no one can get to them. Lissa ends up taking out a spirit-infused stake, and she stabs Dimitri in the heart. And it takes her a few times to, you know, really get it in there, but she does. And suddenly the entire room like explodes with light, and Rose feels their like psychic connection and their bond sort of go silent. You know, finally the room dims down, Rose comes to, and the only thing that she can see is Lissa cradling Dimitri, and he's crying, you know, into her lap. But she sees that he has brown eyes and not red Strigoi eyes. So I'm pretty sure like all of us could guess the, you know, supposed, you know, fake myth of bringing Strigoi back actually works. Dimitri is then very quickly locked up because nobody knows what the fuck just happened, and they obviously still believe him to be a Strigoi. And Rose and Lissa are both like begging people to listen to them, that, you know, he's not a Strigoi anymore, that he's a Dhampir, that he's, you know, not dangerous, but no one is really listening to them. While Dimitri is in his cell, he only wishes to see Lissa. He's constantly asking Lissa to come to him because he believes that she is his savior, that she brought him back from hell, that she saved his soul, and he like dedicates his life in service to her to somehow, you know, make up for all the bad things he did when he was a Strigoi. And he also tells Lissa, and Rose is seeing this through Lissa's eyes, I don't want to see Rose. Like, that is the one thing I cannot do, because Lissa asks him, like, can you see Rose? Can you do that for me? And he says, no, that is the one thing I cannot do. I cannot see her. What I did to her was unforgivable. No. Rose, of course, is, you know, not going to take that answer lying down. So she actually manages to sneak into the cell with the help of a guy named Mikhail, whom I don't believe I've mentioned before because I didn't think he was going to be this important, but apparently he is. Basically, this guy was Sonia Karp's lover. Do you guys remember Sonia Karp? The teacher all the way from the first book. She had spirit powers, and she was so overwhelmed by, you know, the mental health struggles and, you know, all that she ended up purposefully turning Strigoi. So he was in love with her, they were in love, and he actually did the same thing as Rose, Mikhail did, where he tried to like find Sonia and kill her, but he couldn't do it. Anyway, that's Mikhail. And he's obviously very invested in Rose and Dmitri and their love story, whatever, because of, you know, the parallels between him and Sonia. So he sneaks Rose into the cell to talk to Dmitri. But Dmitri refuses to speak to her, pretty much refuses to even look at her. He basically tells Rose that I have lost my ability to love. Like, a part of my soul really did die. And, you know, I can't love you and we can't be together. And you should go and be with Adrian. Coincidentally, Rose then runs into Adrian, who tells her that the Royal Court Council has decided that they are going to lower the age of, you know, guardian entry to 16 years old. So they are going to be putting, like, honest to God kids out there. Rose is absolutely outraged. She marches into the council and the whole place is in uproar. There are people who are saying that this is necessary, and then there are others that are saying that this is, you know, terrible, horrible. And Rose actually like purposefully like breaks protocol and goes straight up to Tatiana and says like, what the fuck? Like, she calls her a bitch. I'm pretty sure she calls her like a sanctimonious bitch or something. It was a little bit iconic, honestly. Rose also brings up that the voting was rigged and unjust because the 12 families, the royal families, were not all represented because Lissa was not allowed her vote. And Lissa is now 18, which means that she is owed a vote. But then Queen Tatiana mentions that apparently you have to have, there's like this law that says that you have to have like other living family members in order to be on the council. And because Lissa is like the only one of her bloodline, she doesn't get a vote. It's stupid, but this, you know, law and formality becomes important later. So basically Rose and everyone is stuck and there's nothing to be done. However, even though Rose has no like legitimate course of action, that doesn't stop her from cursing the hell out of Queen Tatiana. And it gets so bad that she gets, you know, dragged out of that room, kicking and screaming, telling Tatiana that she will regret and rue this decision. So then Rose watches and actually goes to the council room and sees that they're interrogating Dmitri. And they're asking him, you know, can you step out to the sun? And they also like take a stake and have him hold it, which apparently like a Strigoi is unable to do. They kind of like slice him with it, and if he were a Strigoi still, that would be unbearably painful. And so it's kind of decided that, you know, there are more important things to do. He seems like he's not dangerous. He seems like he's not a Strigoi. It's a fucking miracle. Fine, just like let him go. He's not dangerous. Whatever. Done. After this meeting is dispersed, Rose is then approached by one of Abe's employees, her father's employees, and he basically gives her this kind of like tech and camera to set up and says that someone important needs to talk to her in private. And it turns out to be my favorite girl, my best girl, Sydney Sage. And she tells Rose that there have been some alchemist papers and files, top secret, that have been stolen. And those papers were all about Lissa's father, Eric. And they particularly detailed the fact that he had this bank account in Las Vegas that he was constantly sending money to that belonged to a woman named Jane Doe. And I'm just gonna throw this in there because, like, I love Sydney and Adrian, okay? I know that we're not there, like, that's bloodline shit. But I just have to mention that Sydney talked about Adrian and called him cute, and okay. After this talk with Sydney, Rose then runs into Adrian and realizes that she totally forgot about this party that he invited her to with his family. And Adrian basically confronts her and says, listen, you've always had like one foot out of this relationship. You've never fully been in it. I say that that's a good thing because she was a child when you met her. That's weird. Anyway, basically, he says that it's because of Dmitri. Rose, you know, is aware and thinks the same thing, and she apologizes to him. So she goes to the Sunday church service where Dmitri is, and she sits with him and basically tries to talk to him again about, you know, them still being in love and how she knows that he cares for her and that they can still be together, that she forgives him. And Dmitri says that he's not worthy of forgiveness, that he cannot be with her. And he ends it by saying that he not only cannot be with her, but does not want to be. You know, it's not just that he can't love, it's that he does not love her. And that is kind of like this huge, like, I don't know, bucket of cold water sprayed on Rose. Like, she breaks down, she runs off, she's devastated. I guess, like, it's objectively good angst. Like, I think if this storyline was given to, like, literally any other couple, I probably would eat it up. But the fact that it's Rose and Dimitri, like, I don't know what you want me to do about that, because I don't like them. How many times can I say that in one video? You guys know this. You know me. You know me. Adrian and Rose meet up again, and Adrian kind of flippantly mentions that he told his own father about Eric, Lissa's father, and his, like, secret bank account. And Adrian's dad joked about how Eric may have had, like, a secret mistress because he was such a flirt and had a wandering eye. Keep that in mind for later. But the conversation that Adrian and Rose have moves on, and the two start making out and decide they want to sleep together. But they also realize that they don't have protection. So Rose puts the brake on what they're doing. Instead, however, she offers for Adrian to drink from her, which he does. And the next day, Rose is sitting at dinner or lunch or something with Dimitri and a bunch of other guardians, and suddenly the Queen's Guard shows up and they arrest her, and they tell her that she has been charged with treason. The crime that she's being charged with is murdering the Queen. And you guys, I was so gagged when this happened. I sat there and I was like, oh my God, are you serious? It was a good ending, okay? Like, everything that I'm about to describe to you, like, it was just like one revelation after the other. Like, it was so good. Anyway, so she gets arrested, and Dimitri and her start, like, fighting back physically, but then Rose realizes that she cannot let Dimitri go down for whatever this is. So she goes willingly and is arrested. And then she has a hearing where they're going to decide whether or not this will go to trial. And she believes that that's not even possible because, you know, they don't have any evidence against her. Like, yes, she said some, like, heinous things to her and cursed her out at a meeting, but that doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't mean that she killed her. At her hearing, her father Abe shows up in his Sunday best to defend her, but then the prosecuting attorney says that Tatiana was found with Rose's stake in her chest, and that the stake has Rose's prints on it. And despite Adrian and Rose saying that they were together all night, they believe and say that her alibi is not tight and that there are some hours which she is unaccounted for. Basically, they decide that they are going to move forward to trial, and Rose is sent back to her cell. But before she gets there, she is slipped a note that is from Queen Tatiana, obviously before she died. Tatiana basically apologizes for the age decree, lowering the age of guardianship to 16. She apologizes for that and says that there were actually a group of people pushing to just compel every single Dampierre into becoming a guardian. This, like, age-lowering thing was the next best thing that she could do. And she also lets Rose know that Lissa is entitled to her spot on the council, and that apparently she has an illegitimate brother or sister. If Rose can find this child, this person, then Lissa will be able to take her rightful place on the council. And that, my friends, is where this book ends. This ending, you guys, it was so juicy. Like, it was so good. Like, the last, like, 20% of this book was just really, really, like, damn good. Like, ooh, I loved it. And I've heard from many friends that the last book is really insane, really chaotic, just, like, so good. It packs a punch. I can't wait. I can't believe I only have one book left to go. I've been filming this video for like a month, more than a month now. Part of me is just very excited to get it, like, done as well. Like, it's equal parts excitement for finishing the series and a lot of parts excited to be done with this video. All right, so here we are. We have reached the end of this video, the end of this journey, the end of my suffering. And today my suffering exists on two fronts. First of all, I once again have to talk about the couple that is the bane of my existence. And I am also filming on the night of a record heat wave in California. So I'm not having a great time. That also means that I will be continuously, you know, fanning myself, so I'm sorry if that's distracting to you. And you can probably hear my fan running in the background. I also apologize for that, but that is just something that you and I are gonna have to live with because this is the only night that I can film this. Let me just start off by saying that this book, oh, it is one juicy ending. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It took me, a bit to sort of get into the groove, but once I was in it, I was in it, bitch. So we open up the book and Rose is physically stuck in her cell, but she allows herself to enter into Lissa's mind during Tatiana's funeral procession. And during the procession, these like really old artifacts suddenly like explode or topple over, and there's just like general chaos in the room, and Lissa sort of uses this opportunity to sneak away, and Rose is unsure exactly where she's going, and Lissa kind of blocks Rose from knowing that information. At the same time, Rose is then broken out of her cell by Mikhail, and she's taken by Dimitri, and she's whisked away in this car. They meet up with Sydney, and she is there per the request of Abe to help Dimitri and Rose, particularly Rose, run away. And I'm not sure if I've made this explicit in, past sections of this video, but Abe seems to have some kind of hold on Sydney that we're not sure what it is, but it has to be big, because remember, alchemists don't like vampires at all and think of them as, horrid blights on the world. So Abe must have something pretty big on Sydney for her to be doing all these things for him. So Sydney brings them a change of clothes and takes them to this hideout in West Virginia. And basically, Rose finds out that Lissa has concocted this plan to break her out of prison and have her, stay in hiding while the rest of them at the Vampire Academy, Vladimir's Academy. Vladimir? Bruh, I don't know what the fuck I'm saying. This heat is getting to me. Lissa and everyone else back at the academy and back at court are going to try to find a way to clear her name. And Rose is not a fan of this plan because she is not a fan of sitting around and waiting for other people to save her. She is usually the one who does the saving, and now Lissa and Rose, their roles are reversed, and she's uncomfortable with that. She gets pissed at Dimitri. They're kind of like fighting with each other, and then they end up kissing. Rose uses that moment of like vulnerability and catching Dimitri off his guard to punch him and run away, which was a great moment for me as a Dimitri anti. Rose jumps into Lissa's mind and sees her being questioned by Hans, Alberta, and Natasha. And when the question comes up of why Dimitri would be involved in this plan to break out and help Rose, Lissa finally cracks and tells them that Rose and Dimitri are involved and are in love. And this really shocks Hans, although Alberta doesn't really seem that shocked. And Hans says that whatever was going on between them obviously started when she was underage and thus should have been reported. Thank you. Thank you, King. I love this man. I automatically love anyone who calls out this bullshit in canon, because I am just like reading this shit or listening to this shit and screaming, and when someone finally in the fucking book calls it out, I'm so happy. But then again, it never goes anywhere, so I don't stay happy for long. Adrian, Lissa, and Christian then go to Adrian's house to sort of talk about what's been going on and what their plan is going to be. And while they're there, this guy named Joe, who during Tatiana's murder trial actually provided testimony and gave Adrian an alibi so that he wouldn't be implicated in the murder. So this guy shows up, and Lissa is suspicious of him and basically compels him into confessing that Adrian's mother, Daniela, paid him off to give Adrian that alibi, and that another mysterious, strange Moroi man also paid him to implicate Rose in the murder. Now, Rose comes crashing back to herself when Dimitri crashes into her physically and, catches her when she tried to run away. And he basically tells her that if she wants to help Lissa, the best thing that she can do is go along with her plan and stay in hiding. And Rose sort of takes that into consideration, and she decides to herself that the best thing that she can do to help Lissa is to find out who her long-lost sibling is, who the second Dragomir is. That night when she is asleep, Rose is then pulled into a spirit dream, but this time she is pulled in not by Adrian, but by Victor and Robert, whom she has no idea where they are right now. Remember, they ran away in the last book. Now, Rose ends up telling Robert about this note, and he gives her the advice that she should do everything that she can to just buy Lissa time. And one way that she can do this is to have Lissa be nominated for the next monarch, because there is a series of trials that every single candidate has to go through, and this will, of course, buy her some time. So Rose is then, immediately after this spirit dream, pulled into a spirit dream with Adrian, and that is when she tells him to execute this plan. Then one of many huge bombshells and plot twists is dropped when Sydney comes to Dimitri and Rose and tells them that the Las Vegas account, remember from the last book, that Eric Dragomir was funneling money into, remember this is the bank account that they believe is somehow connected to Eric's mistress and thus connected to the secret child that he had. So Sydney tells them that this bank account is in the name of Sonia Karp, but was only put in her name during the last few years. So the trio set out to go find Sonia. So Dimitri calls up one of his contacts from when he was a Strigoi, pretends to be his Strigoi self on the phone, and they meet up with this guy who knows where Sonia is, and they get the info out of him, by beating him. And then Dimitri ends up going so far as to kill him. And he does this in a way to sort of like make up for the innocent lives that he took when he was Strigoi himself. Back at court, Adrian, Christian, and Natasha Ozera nominate Lissa to be one of the candidates in the running for being the next monarch. And Lissa is absolutely thrown by this, but in front of everybody she can't say no, so she agrees. And she and the rest of the candidates are, going through the first task, where they are taken and dropped in the middle of a nearby woods with only a compass and a cell phone. And they basically have to navigate their own way back to civilization, and if they use the cell phone to call for help, then they are out of the running to be the monarch. Lissa passes the test and does very well, and when she is being brought back to court, she sees these hordes of people who are screaming her name, calling for the last Dragomir, for the dragon to come back. And in this moment, she realizes how much this nomination means to people, because all the people there are non-royal. So the fact that they believe in her and that they see her as a chance, for them to have some kind of voice in government means a lot to her. So she decides that she's going to take these trials seriously. So back at their hideout, Rose, Dimitri, and Sydney manage to capture Sonia, and they have her tied up. She's still Strigoi, and that is when Victor and Robert then show up, and Robert uses a spirit-infused stake to, stake Sonia and bring her back to her Moroi self. And Dimitri sort of takes her away from the group and tries to talk her through and help her through this very immediate transition. Rose then goes to Sonia and confronts her with the information of the secret Dragomir baby, saying that she knows that she has some connection to this person and that she has been, providing funds for this child. And at first Sonia kind of clams up and doesn't want to say anything, but when Rose mentions Mikhail, whom, if you remember, is Sonia's past lover, Sonia says, okay, fine, I'll help you. So she has them drive to this remote location to this house. And that house turns out to be the home of none other than Jill Mastrano. Now, for those of you who don't remember Jill, you may remember her by her very sickening and gross nickname, Jailbait. Okay, we're gonna move on, because if I get started, I won't be able to stop. When Rose sees Jill come to the door, she sees her green eyes and immediately recognizes them as the signature green eyes of the Dragomir family. And she's like, oh shit, this is her. So Emily, Jill's mother, turns out to be Sonia Karp's very close cousin. And years ago, she was a dancer at a club. She met Eric, they got to know one another, they slept together, and that was pretty much it until Emily found out that she was pregnant. And she told Eric about it, but said that she didn't want or expect anything from him. But he still sort of was funneling money into this account to be used how Emily saw fit. And Emily was keeping it stored away for Jill to use for college or anything that she might need. But she never revealed Jill's true identity because she didn't want Jill involved in court politics, which is understandable because most people at court are assholes. Unfortunately, Rose is here to burst Emily's bubble, and she says that Jill has to make her identity known, because in order for Lissa to take her place on the council, for her to be eligible to be queen, she must have at least one living family member. And Jill is the only one that she has left. And Emily and her are kind of going back and forth on this, and then finally Jill speaks up and says that she wants to do this. She wants to support Lissa and reveal her true identity. The entire group is then invited to stay the night, including Victor and Robert, but Sonia has been using this like disguise compulsion spirit thing on them so they don't look like themselves. Rose and Dimitri end up talking, and Dimitri keeps asking all these questions about Adrian. You know, is he a good guy? Does he treat you right? Do you love him? And Rose, you know, says yes to all these things. And it seems like Rose and Dimitri are about to kiss, but then they hear a commotion and realize that a bunch of guardians are there and have them surrounded. Rose and Dimitri manage to run away and evade their captors, and Rose goes to sleep and has a spirit dream and connection with Sonia. Sonia tells her that she also managed to run away, but Victor and Robert also ran away and took Jill with them, which obviously is a big fucking problem. During this dream conversation, Sonia also mentions to Rose that when she and Dimitri are around each other, their auras light up and spark and illuminate in a way that doesn't happen around anyone else, including Adrian. And she also mentions that Rose's aura continues to grow darker and darker from all of the side effects and negativity that she is taking on from Lissa's use of spirit, and that one day this may cause her to snap and explode in a way that is dangerous to her and to people around her. Rose then enters Lissa's mind again, and she sees Lissa, Eddie, and Christian go to talk to Ambrose, whom is a Dhampir who was the lover of Queen Tatiana. And he shows them this anonymous letter that was sent to Queen Tatiana, where, you know, it's very passive-aggressive, and they question a lot of her decisions as queen, and they also mentioned that she was supposedly having a bunch of, you know, select few royal Morroys learn how to fight, you know, hand-to-hand combat from a guardian, and that they were also learning how to use offensive magic. And amongst this small select group was Adrian's mother, Daniela. As they are leaving this meeting, the group is then attacked by a Morroy with a knife, and Eddie manages to subdue him, but this man is not giving up. He is intent on killing Eddie. So Eddie really has no choice but to kill him. And then a bunch of other guardians show up, and they come to the scene, and all they see is a dead Morroy and Eddie standing above him with a knife. So they arrest Eddie, and they start questioning the entire group. Because remember, the number one rule for Dhampirs is to protect Morroy. So for a guardian to kill one is, you know, taboo. It's unheard of. It's wild. And they are trying to figure out if there's any way that Eddie could have subdued the man and not kill him. So Hans is questioning him, and Lissa is defending him, but eventually it's decided that they have to kind of just let Eddie go and continue on trying to clear Rose's name without him. Lissa then takes part in the final task before the official court vote for who becomes the next monarch. And this task is just a question, and the question is, what does a queen or king need to have to be a good ruler? And Lissa has 24 hours to answer the question, and she's just racking her brain. And finally, she comes to the day that she has to answer, and she says nothing, because a good ruler should give up everything that they have for the people. And it turns out this is the correct answer. Of course she figured it out. Like, that's my baby, that's my girl. Like, no offense to Rose, or maybe full offense to Rose, but like, Lissa is just, she's it, you know? Like, she's the moment. If you're not a Lissa stan, I don't know if I want to know you. During this time, Lissa and Rose have also come to the same conclusion, which is that the person with the most access to Tatiana, the person with the biggest motive, is Daniela Ivashkov. But Lissa, of course, wants to keep this information from Adrian, and she wants to find some, like, solid, concrete proof. Dimitri and Rose are sharing a bed while they're hiding out, and they're growing closer, you know, physically, emotionally. And then Sonia comes up and breaks all that up, thank God for her. And she tells them that she knows where Jill is, and so they all go together. They go to where Sonia said that Jill is, and a brawl ends up breaking out. And Victor and Rose are particularly going up against each other. And at one point during this fight, Rose just kind of like breaks. Like, she sees Victor as like the embodiment of everything evil in the world, everything wrong with her life, and this is like spirit sort of taking over her. And she ends up slamming him so hard into concrete that he dies. Like, he hits his head and just dies. I was not expecting him to go out like that. Like, I don't even think I was expecting him to die. I thought he would just end up like locked in prison or something. But like, wow. Like, wow. I think this is going to be another standout scene that I need to see adapted, because it was a little hardcore and a little iconic to just slam this old bag of bones so hard into a wall that he dies. Damn. After this low-key iconic moment, Rose ends up having a bit of a mental break because she just is so shocked by what she did, killing a Moroi, even if he was a bad one, an evil one even. She can't come to terms with it. And Dimitri comes to her and tells her that she has to forgive herself. She was not herself when she did that thing when she killed Victor. And Rose kind of turns that back on him and says, okay, well, if you're telling me to forgive myself, then you also need to do the same thing. This conversation eventually leads to them reaffirming their love, and they sleep together again. At this point, I'm tired. Let's keep the ball fucking rolling. Then we mercifully go back to the court politics, which I have to say was the best plot line in this entire book. Of course Lissa, the superior character, has a superior arc. It's the way of the world. So the final 3 candidates give a speech, and when Lissa gives hers, she is really addressing not only the court, but everyone outside the court who is out there listening to her. And she gives this really controversial yet diplomatic speech where she says that, the royal system has to change. We don't have to let go of our traditions, but we need to update them to include everybody. And a lot of people, outside, of course, they're screaming and crying, but even people in the court itself are very moved and they're cheering for her and, even crying. And then when it is announced that Lissa can no longer participate and is being disqualified for not having any living family members, the entire court and, outside completely erupts. And so no decision or vote can be made that day. And this actually works out for Rose because now she has enough time to get Jill to the court to change the tide and ensure that Lissa is made queen. Rose, Dimitri, Sonia, and Jill all show up to court, and Mikhail and Adrian are there to meet them. And there is this really sweet reunion between Sonia and Mikhail. You guys, I got so invested in these two, even though they weren't even a side couple. They were a peripheral couple. But I fucking loved them, and this reunion was so adorable. And then during this same moment, Adrian sees Rose and Dimitri holding hands, but we don't have time to get into all that, love triangle, cheating, whatever bullshit, because Rose has to go to the hotel where all the alchemists are, and she breaks in to see Sydney. Rose then enlists Sydney's help to interrogate and question this one alchemist named Ian, who saw someone, enter Tatiana's, house or her chamber. The details are a little bit fuzzy, you guys. I'm sorry, I couldn't follow all of it. But basically, Ian reveals to Rose that it was not Daniela who went to see Tatiana that night or had access to her, but it was someone else. So court has come back together to have, their final vote, their final say. And Rose interrupts, takes the mic, takes off the, spirit disguise that she's had on. And she says that she's not the one who murdered Tatiana. And she then reveals that it was Natasha Ozera, Christian's aunt, who killed Tatiana because she hated the decisions that she made as ruler. She vehemently opposed her politics. And Natasha also wanted to frame Rose because she still loves Dimitri. Now, Christian and Tasha are both absolutely baffled by this and are questioning why Rose would do this. And Rose herself is having a lot of inner turmoil because she really cares about and loves Natasha and knows that this will also hurt Christian, whom she sees as a friend, and in doing that will hurt Lissa as well. When Hans and a group of other guardians move to arrest Natasha, she suddenly pulls out a gun and grabs the closest person to her to threaten and put the gun against. And that person turns out to be Mia Rinaldi. Now, Lissa runs towards them to try to save Mia or, talk Natasha out of what she's doing. And in that same moment, Mia uses some of her, fighting techniques to get out of the hold. And then Natasha's hand sort of goes flying and she just starts shooting off rounds. And all of those rounds are headed towards Lissa. But Rose, in the final moments, jumps in front of Lissa and takes the bullets herself. And she's, dying. She sees Lissa's face. She sees Dimitri's face. She thinks about how much she loves them, and everything goes black. But of course, this is a YA series, and, we can't have our main character die. So she wakes up in the hospital, and Dimitri's there, and it turns out that, she's fine. She's gonna make a full recovery. Dimitri then reveals to her that Natasha has been imprisoned and, sentenced for Tatiana's murder, and that Rose is now a free woman. And even better than that, Rose has been assigned to be Lissa's guardian, and Dimitri is going to be Christian's guardian, which means that they will be seeing a lot of each other over the next how many years that they have their career. Lissa then enters the room and it is revealed that their bond has been lost and broken. And this apparently happened because the second time that Rose died, she was the one to bring herself back from death and it wasn't Spirit. I don't really get it and I don't think we're supposed to get it, but anyway, the bond is gone. And it was really interesting to read these final few chapters in which Rose is just constantly trying to guess what Lissa is thinking and is like struggling to really decipher, her face and her body language. Lissa then reveals that in the aftermath of all this craziness, she has been named Queen. And now she has to balance all of her queenly duties with going to college and also having to, help a grieving Christian who is, he still loves his aunt, but he can't accept what she did. And on top of all of that, she is also alone facing Spirit. She doesn't have Rose, taking away the darkness and the negativity. Lissa then invites Jill to be a part of her coronation. And you can tell that, while they do like each other and they have some affection for one another, they are also very wary of one another. Lissa sees Jill as like proof of her father's infidelity and this crack in her perfect family life. And Jill sort of sees Lissa as, kind of like a representation of the overturning of her entire life and identity. So there's some tension there for sure, but Jill agrees to be part of the ceremony. So then we cut to a scene where Adrian and Rose have it out over their failed relationship. Adrian accuses her of cheating and says that, she was always gonna pick Dimitri and that she was just sort of using him as like a way to wait out the time until she could be with Dimitri again. And Rose apologizes and just keeps saying that she just can't feel for him what she feels for Dimitri and that they really understand each other, and one day Adrian will find the same and realize that this was for the best, which, hint, hint, wink, wink, he's already met that person. And Adrian leaves this conversation by telling Rose that while she may have got her happy ending, there was a lot of collateral damage left behind, including him, including Jill, and including Sydney. And he just kind of leaves Rose with that. We then go to Lissa's coronation, and I just absolutely adored this scene. We got to see Lissa walk down the aisle towards the throne, and Christian was there, on her arm, and he's now Lord Ozera, and Queen Lissa. Like, incredible, wonderful, amazing. Like, that is my fucking shit. Jill puts the crown on Lissa, Lissa sits on the throne, and everyone cheers for her. And yeah, that's just kind of how the book ends. Looking back on my experience reading the Vampire Academy series, I have to say that I have a fairly dichotomous experience, i.e., there are like two different wavelengths that I was constantly on while reading these books. I had a shit ton of fun reading this series. It was incredibly enjoyable. I sped through these books, I was turning the page, I was getting through them so quickly, and I really do enjoy the world that Michelle Mead created. I think that it's fun. I think that with every book, she was expanding the world, expanding the rules, and it kept me going. It kept me coming back for more. I had a particularly good time reading those final two books. There were so many twists and turns and revelations. Like, it was a good fucking time. I think that the relationship between Lissa and Rose is the real highlight of these books. And I like that their friendship goes through highs and lows. They weren't just, perfectly supportive and always understanding one another. Like, they really had to struggle and, work through some issues. And I appreciate that. I appreciated that we had this friendship at the heart of these books. However, at the same time, as you all have witnessed throughout this video, there's this running thread of me absolutely hating the romance in this book series. And the romance was just as important as, the character building and other relationships and, plot points that were happening. Like, it's very central to these books. So if you don't like the romance, like I didn't, that's gonna make it really hard for you to truly enjoy this series. I believe that if I had actually liked Rose and Dimitri, if they had been written in a way that didn't give me the ick, I really think that this would have been like a solid 4-star series, like across the board. I would have given it 4 stars. But instead, I could never bring myself to give any of these books above a 3-star. I don't think that Rose and Dimitri are the most egregious example of, imbalanced power dynamics in a relationship, but for me personally, they cross a lot of my hard lines. Maybe they don't cross certain hard lines for other people, you know, when it comes to fictional romance, but for me, they did, and I couldn't get on board. In general, I'm really of two minds when it comes to this series. There are things that I really love and things that I really, really don't love, and that just kind of leaves me with a pretty, I don't know, like middling experience. There were a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And you know what's so funny is looking ahead towards the Peacock show, I have a feeling that I am going to ride so hard for Rose and Dimitri. First of all, they're gorgeous. This has been established. And also, they seem, at least appear to be, like much more close in age to one another. I don't know what the dynamic is going to be. I'm kind of in my own head wondering if maybe he's like part of the graduating class above Rose, and they've chosen him as like the best in the class to teach her. Maybe he is still like a mentor, but in this case he would be one who like very recently graduated. Or maybe they just aged Rose and everyone else up a bit. Either way, I'm very happy, and I'm just so excited that I can finally get in on the Rose and Dimitri love for once, because I didn't get it with the book series. I really didn't get it with the film that came out, but now finally, third time, the lucky time, third time's the charm. This video, I'm pretty sure, is my longest one yet, and I am really not in the business of creating like 3-hour-long documentaries. Then again, maybe I am, because if you look at my like last couple uploads, I feel like I've been uploading really long videos. So I guess that is it for me today, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Kudos to you if you got all the way to the end. Like seriously, I feel like I should give you some type of medal or like certificate or something. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know your experience and your history with the Vampire Academy series. Let me know if you read it, you know, way back when it came out, if you've read it recently, if you're excited for the upcoming TV show, or if you have some qualms. If you guys want to find me or follow me anywhere else, all those links will be down below. I should also mention that you guys should definitely come back, because I will be reacting to and reviewing the upcoming Peacock show. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I have completely forgotten what my normal outro is, but yeah, I love you, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye!